right, good evening. We'll call to order the regular monthly meeting of the City of Helotes Planning and Zoning Commission. It's 7 o'clock. Ask the commission secretary to call the roll, please.
Greg Michelle.
Here?
Jason Whiteman.
Here.
Ron Haza. Joe Edmond.
Here.
Richard Hawk.
Here.
Mike McLaughlin.
Here.
Jeff Wade.
Here.
Mario Rios.
We have Rick Schroeder, our city administrator here, Susan Darst, Alex Blue, Cindy Massey's here, both from council. Good to see you. All right, our first item this evening is a public hearing to give all interested persons the right to appear and be heard on a request by Verizon Wireless for a specific city council approved use permit for the construction of a telecommunication tower and a variance to Chapter 98 zoning, Article 11, telecommunication facilities, Section 368, standards for transmission towers and antenna, authorizing a reduction in the required and separation distance of 2,000 feet between telecommunication towers on property zoned Neighborhood Service District B2 and located at 13218 Bandera Road. Do we have anyone signed up this evening for that particular item? Okay, so we'll open the public hearing at 7:02, and for those who wish to speak, we ask that you please just give your name and address, limit your remarks to 3 minutes, and it's an opportunity for you to tell us what you think as opposed to ask questions and have a dialogue at this point. So please come on up. Mr., help me with your name.
It's Hebinger. Thank you,
Great.
Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me tonight. I appreciate you hearing this. Board, my name is Vince Hebinger with Vincent Gerard and Associates, representing the church and Verizon. Rick, I think you have a PowerPoint that I was going to ask you to blow through with me, or?
Are we going to do that?
So we're going to hold off on doing that till we get to that agenda item for the council itself.
Should I postpone my presentation till we get
That's
there?
fine. That would
Okay.
be fine,
All right.
because we may have questions for you anyway.
Thank you, sir.
No problem. So is there anyone else here this evening who wishes to speak to that item? Come on up, if you just give us your name and address, please. And as before, 3 minutes, and share with us what you would like.
Hello, I'm Brenda Sanders, and I live at 10614 Barracks Trail, and I would like to address the issue of the telecommunications tower that the Presbyterian Church would like to put up on their steeple or wherever they plan on doing it. I have concerns about noise, lighting, the overall appearance of what it would look like in our city, and how it would affect us as a residential zone living directly behind them. And my other main concern is the NIER that the FAA has regulated. You know what I mean by this, correct?
You can elaborate?
The specifically, it's here in our laws of ordinances. It's called the non-ionizing electromagnetic radiation. And I'm concerned for my health because of this. And so I am not only worried about myself, but the other people in the neighborhood that could be affected by that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else to speak this evening? All right, we will close the public hearing at 7:05. We have a second public hearing on our agenda to give all interested persons the right to appear and be heard on a request from city staff to amend the Municipal Code of Ordinances, Chapter 98, zoning, Section 69, overlay district, that's B3 overlay district, and the addition of regulations to the same chapter regulating ornamental tower, cupola, dome, spire, and similar structural element heights that are not designed for occupancy. We'll open that public hearing at 7:05. Is there anyone here to speak to that item? Okay, we will close that public hearing. Our next item is citizens to be heard. City Administrator, there is no one for that, so we will skip ahead to discussion and action on the minutes of the regular meeting of Planning and Zoning from February the 6th, 2018. Everyone received a copy of these minutes in their packets. If there are any edits, corrections, changes, please call those to our attention, or we can have a motion.
And I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as stated.
Second from Mike. Motion is to approve the minutes as submitted for February 6, 2018. All in favor of approving the minutes, signal aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. Okay, we'll move on to item 7 this evening, which is the discussion and action on the request by Verizon Wireless for the approval of the specific City Council-approved use permit for the construction of a telecommunications tower and a variance to Chapter 98, Section 368, authorizing a reduction in the required separation of 2,000 feet between telecommunication towers on property zone B2 and located at 13218 Bandera Road. I'd like to ask the city administrator if you'd care to present this, and if we have questions, we'll go with that. So why don't you hang on for just a second and let city administrator take the lead on this? Unless you'd like him to go first.
No, it's fine. Thank you, Chairman. I did want to go through, we did include an agenda item request form with this item, and it was included within your packets. For the sake of time tonight, since this is a loaded agenda, I'm going to go through the things that staff found that were not compliant with this item and that the applicant is asking for a variance for from the commission and city council. This will go to the city council on March 8th, so Thursday of this week, for a final decision. The first thing that, when reviewing this item, that wasn't compliant was the submission of a visual study containing at a minimum a graphic simulation showing the appearance of the proposed tower. And it had to be from multiple points throughout the city. Originally, that was not included, and no variance could be granted for that. You can see it on the dais. They did provide a copy of various perspectives and what this proposed tower will look like from the north, east, south, and west. The major request for a variance comes from the separation requirements between transmission towers. It does state that no transmission tower can be constructed within 2,000 feet of any pre-existing transmission tower. Here at the municipal complex, you know we have a transmission tower, and that tower is approximately 1,300 feet. The proposed tower is 1,300 feet from the existing cell tower here. So a variance would have to be granted by city council on that point. The other thing when we were doing our review were the setback requirements. The setback requirements for adjacent property lines, and in this case, it would be B2 and R1, would be 50 feet. The distance, however, from the proposed tower to the adjacent rear property line, as calculated by myself, was 40 feet. And the rear property, again, is zoned R1. There are no existing homes on those tracks. I think they've used them as soccer fields in the past, but they are zoned R1. So that would require a variance as well. The third thing that was not included within the packets was the buffering requirements for landscaping. Landscaping in the plan is shown on two sides of the transmission tower. However, landscaping per our code has to be on three sides of the tower, and no landscaping plan was submitted. The applicant did inform me that he was waiting to submit the landscaping plan to the city arborist, which does make sense because he would be the one that would review those things. But on the conceptual plan, they should add, if it's granted approval, should add an additional landscaping buffer on the third side of the project. Lastly, I'll say is the display section of our code that says no signs, striping, graphics, or other attention-getting devices are permitted on the transmission tower or ancillary facilities except for warning and safety signage. Now, I will say that I am a religious man myself, but there is a cross at the top of this, and so it would be up to the commission and council as to whether they consider that not in compliance with the display requirements within our code.
Okay, and by submission, the materials that were submitted, had it been, I believe I read that it had been confirmed, the noise abatement tests, that this was within the acceptable range? Am I recalling that correctly?
That would be something for the applicant to,
Okay.
or the applicant's representative to address. The city, as you know, has, doesn't really have a noise abatement ordinance. And so those regulations, I would assume, would be handled by another regulatory agency, and so I would defer to Vince on that.
So why don't you come on up, and before you, if you have some things you'd like to show us, and I'd like to keep it brief because we do have a long agenda.
Go as fast
Maybe you could
as I
just address that one issue and then go forward from there.
Sure, thank you, sir. If you mind running that thing for me real quick, I'll go through this thing. Just go to the second slide, Rick. But you know where Forest Hills Presbyterian is. The next one shows you the 1,300 feet. Roll it again. This is the location across the street from the AT&T flagpole behind us right here. It is 1,300 feet. Both of them are stealth, and there are provisions within your code to allow this variance of both are stealth, both have tree cover, and a couple other things I may be missing. So there's an allowance there. And I want to specifically talk about this facility. If you roll it one more time, the priorities for the site options. We do everything we can not to come and build another tower. So our priority from get-go was that flagpole behind us. We tried to get on that thing. It's owned by Crown. It is at complete capacity. AT&T's got 3 rings. They have a generator there too, like we do. There's just no possible technical way that we could put 2 or 3 sets of antennas on that structure and still maintain the integrity of it. The second option we came into was asking the city, I don't know if it was you, Rick, or somebody, but within the city staff, can we put another flagpole on the city? That was entertained for a while, but I think there was shown no interest involved. So we have every physical possibility that we looked at, vertical structures and everything like that. We've tried to do that. So we come to the next slide. I'm sorry, we're going to talk a little bit about network capacity, and I'll blow through that real quick, and increased coverage. The lady talked about RF safety, and I have a handout for that. But if you would roll it for me again, please, sir. That was our target. It's right behind us. If you roll it one more time, you can see the canisters are outside, the antennas are inside. So that's what a stealth facility is. You have to compact that thing quite a bit to get 3 antennas. And then a typical site have 6 to 9 to 12 that is completely loaded. In this case, you're getting a little bit less optimal coverage on a stealth. Please roll it again. Then we come to the zoning. We have so many hurdles within that. We've already basically discounted the existing tower that we can't help within 1,300 feet. But we have commercial zoning that is the only place we can go is within that area. If you look at the circle there, the RF engineers just literally target an area that small to say, we're gonna go between our existing sites to download some coverage on this one by the school, on the other side of the school, and try to serve some of the eastern portions of your neighborhood back behind us. So with the zoning, with the willing landlords, with everything involved, it's just increasingly difficult to try to get in-neighborhood coverage and capacity coverage because your smartphones are eating us alive. That's basically it. If you roll to the next one, you can't see it very well. I'm sorry about this one, but there are all the Verizon sites within the area, and then you see where we are. And if you literally draw a cross section between that circle, we're at the center, and that means we're trying to cover the the best optimal solution. Roll to the next one, please. These are RF maps from what we call the Doppler radar maps. These are RF engineers that study basically the phone patterns and the coverage areas within the topography that we have in challenging tree and terrain. As you can tell, red and yellow are not very good, and we're sitting right on red and yellow across 16 and going towards that neighborhood. So currently, as you drive around this town, you're in a vehicle, you're gonna get your phone call. When you go to that side of the area, when we had our church meeting the other night, I had one bar and was not getting very good download data volumes for the emails. As further you go out to that neighborhood, it's the same situation. If you kick on the next slide, you can see what happens after we go on air with that church site. And that is a big, significant difference. Now, the next one, Rick, if you please, is a summary from RF Engineering is that school's a hotspot in high traffic, and the site to our south is exhausted. In other words, the capacity on that site has reached maximum conditions. Just to give you an example, if you've got your battery in your car, you start your one car with that one battery, but try to start 15 cars with that same battery. That's RF power is being exceeded by the amount of applications we're running on that existing structure. So your download speed, you're gonna be starting to drop calls. That's why we're out here trying to pitch this for the community, is to provide E911 service better than that, and then download some of that capacity problems over there on the, excuse me, on the other side of O'Connor High School. Next one, please, is, real quick, we talked about the 50-foot setback. The property owner behind that is the church. They own all of those lots. They have provided us a letter that's stating that they support the variance to the 50 feet. It is about 40 feet. We tried to get 50 feet from the corner commercial and 50 feet from the back church lot line, and it just doesn't fit in that area. So we're requesting a variance with the approval of the landowner that's over there that is going to be, well, most of them are actually present here. Some of them are here as well. So within that, a re-subdivision could take away that lot line, and we would be grand. However, that's being supported by that property owner. The next one, please, is, we talked about the capacity. We talked about the zoning. We talked about the vertical structures that we try to get on this side over here. And we also talked about the things that we're not making, is basically the distance from the existing stealth pole and the common property line owned by the church. Next one is something that, excuse me, Rick talked about on the landscaping. Now, we had a pre-development meeting with your staff talking about that very specific thing, and they did say, you know, if you're putting masonry walls up, just wait until the building permit. We'll give you an idea what your landscaping will be. We'll put landscaping up there if that's what this commission desires. That's not a problem. The church is in well support of this. We're already building a nice masonry wall to match the church. Rick talked about the buffer. The commercial buffer strip with the masonry wall is 30 feet. That is the code requirement, and we're meeting it already. And then we have the one, I'm sorry, we have the one corner of the Exxon station that we still meet 50 feet. Now, there's the problem with our variance. We're just tucked right into the side of the wall. If we had another 2 or 3 feet, we would make it, but this location just doesn't quite make it, so we need that variance to make this work. And again, with the support of the church, that'd be fine. The last few slides, I think, are, this is the options that we go through on site. With the zoning, with the setbacks of residential structures, with everything, we looked at all possible locations for that. And, you know, you come up to this situation behind the Exxon station, which is a good screening. You have the tree cover that screens it as well. And you can see in the next one, Rick, the photo sims from north. Go to the next one. Photo right there on the site, basically, is a cross. It's a religious symbol. And that's another thing we want to try to stealth. We don't want everybody to recognize what it is. Most of the people from the church meeting did not know what that flagpole was. 95% of the people driving into your community won't know that's a stealth tower. But go to the next one, please. You can see the flagpole on the left and the cross on the right. And then the next one is, I think it's standing in the driveway here. So the best we can do basically is try to match the land use, make it inconspicuous as possible, and provide coverage. I have some people from the church, if they want to stand up. I don't think they wanted to speak, but they are here in support. I have a petition and a nice letter that I'm going to leave with Rick that tells you what the church would be doing with the funds to benefit the community as well, and 40 other signatures on it. And if you have any questions, I'm sure you do, I'm here to answer them. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We open it up to the commission. Comments, questions on the various aspects of this?
Mr. Chairman,
Ron?
I don't know if I don't see it in here. Is there an actual, what color this building is? Is there a,
What, the church building?
no,
Oh,
The tower?
the tower, is there a small building around the tower, or is this,
no, there's going to be an outdoor equipment, a platform and a generator, and I forgot to talk about the noise deal. The generator is just for backup emergency purposes only. This thing is quiet, so it's just an outdoor platform. You'll never see it behind the wall.
is there a, what color is the wall?
The wall's going to match the church. It's kind of a off pink red brick masonry stone.
Maybe a question more for Rick. If I'd known it, I've forgotten it. Where did the 2,000 feet come from? The requirement that it has to be no closer than 2,000 feet to another,
Commissioner, that's before my time. I don't recall.
okay.
Some,
Well, I was just wondering where, you see a number, where did that?
Yeah, I don't.
Okay.
it's not uncommon for communities to have ordinances with separation distance between monopoles that are standard, but stealth, when you're not really recognizing what they are, is usually
It's
waived.
not for any signal quality or anything like that, it's just for
No, I think it's a policy decision that you guys make to say, okay, I don't want these every 2,000 feet, but, standard monopoles is what my experience showed that the other communities would do, say, I don't want standard monopoles every 2,000 feet, show me why you can't make that work. Now, they'll let stealth encroach on that, but,
But it's not, the other part of the question is it's not because of signal properties or anything like that? Because you talked about being on the same land over here with this,
yes, sir.
that,
No, they're fierce competitors, but they work well with each other now, better than before. But they'll go on that tower, and they could have if they would have had, a couple of slots.
yeah, okay.
Others?
Mr. Chair, my question is, sir, is this the final for your technology? Will you need to add more stealths down the road for population, or is this just
That's a
for
good
your-
question. I don't know when it's going to stop. I used to come in here and ask people who has a cell phone when we were first building it out. Now it's hammering on the systems with our major applications, smartphones. So what I've seen in the last couple of years is we're having to go in between and try to find rooftops and stuff. They're introducing some small cells, which will cover small blocks in like Old Town, downtown Helotes and in the historic areas, but I don't know the answer to that. It seems to be slowing down.
Thank you, sir.
In terms of the, I guess you're calling it stealth because the technology is hidden inside this object, and I guess obviously the same thing with the town flagpole, which I was aware of that. What other forms do these typically take? I mean, I imagine I've seen cross-shaped ones and flagpole-shaped ones elsewhere. Are there other options that potentially could be explored for the form of this thing?
There's, I think those two may be the most common. Obviously, on a church, they all want some kind of a cross because of their faith. It's come to my attention over these years that the unipole, literally the flagpole without the flag, is probably the most unobtrusive, unnoticeable structure. And we do a lot of those. Now, in places that I have visited, they do some trees, but trees stand out so much. Palm trees, those things, some places in Las Vegas and California. But generally speaking, you see the flagpole, the cross, or the unipole, and that's just about it.
Mr. Chairman,
Joe?
do you have a generator or something that's providing electrical to this system?
We're gonna power up on regular power. We'll run that 24/7. If power goes out in certain situations, we have a thunderstorm that knocks us out, it knocks a couple lines out. There are battery backups in the cabinet that will last about 4 to 6 hours. And if that's still not on, that generator will kick on so you and I can make a phone call. So that's the reason for the generator. FCC wanted that to happen years ago after Ike and Dolly and all those systems went down. We didn't have any phone calls. They wanted backup power to as many sites as possible. And that's what Verizon's committing to, and I'm sure AT&T probably has one in the back there too.
Would there be a noise concern from the generator?
At the time, if you're out of power, I don't know if you're really worried about the noise. It is a whisper quiet style generator, but it's 60 dBs. It is also enclosed within 8-foot, is it? 8-foot masonry wall. So that will knock the sound out, and we'll also have, if we put some landscape, we'll have some trees. So I don't think anybody within, a couple of 100 feet will hear that.
The nearest resident?
I'm sorry?
Do you know the nearest resident, the distance for the
Yes, the nearest residential distance is 335, I believe. 335 feet away.
Okay. Okay.
Somebody over here? Other questions?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Question maybe again to Rick. So why was the city, because I hear that the city evidently was not interested in entertaining maybe a second tower at the site we have here? Because it seems like that would have avoided a lot of, the reasons for this meeting.
The Verizon first came forward and asked to co-locate on the antenna. Crown Castle came back and said that that wasn't an option because there's just not enough real estate on there. Then we were still in negotiations, it's my understanding, with Verizon Wireless about acquiring some additional property. So we had not, in my opinion, exhausted that before we could send that to city council. And then we received this application. So I can tell you that when discussing it with city staff and also Mayor Schoolcraft, we were very hesitant on essentially creating another large swath of area to the rear of City Hall for another cell tower. Particularly given the fact that we don't have enough property as it is to adequately service all departments 15, 20 years into the future. So that's what we were looking at. But as far as the city saying no, the city actually didn't say no, but we were, again, trying to negotiate that with Verizon.
And Mr. Chair, I have some RF information I can pass out if you need
You
that.
can pass it around, we have a couple other things.
Yeah, I had one more question.
Yes, sir.
What kind of fuel do you use in that generator?
It's a diesel, and it's got a double steel line tank, UL 121 rated.
Okay.
It's-
No problem with spillage?
I'm sorry?
No problem with spillage, is it?
Yeah, there's this leak detection system built in too, so I don't think we have any major problems with spillage. And testing and technicians look at it every month.
Okay.
Other comments, questions?
Mr. Chairman, as a comment, I kind of echo the city administrator's concern that this effectively becomes a sign. I am also a God-fearing person. I attend Mass across the street every single week. But we've been pretty strict about sign ordinances, and this, clearly is a symbol of Christianity, which is, several orders of magnitude larger and what our sign ordinance allows. And my personal preference would be to see something more neutral if we're going to move forward with this.
And that certainly, if this moves forward as a motion, could be something that is part of a motion that is approved by this body, so. Another comment, the very first line of our code regarding telecommunications speaks to the need to minimize the number of such towers, followed by trying to use existing facilities. And so that's something that one has to balance along with the needs for cellular coverage, telecommunications and whatnot. And so that's the balancing act, I think, that's going on here. I think many of the issues that have been brought up, such as landscaping and buffering, are resolvable. The display issue of what actually the appearance of it is, I think, is addressable. But we do have the issue of it being very closer than is allowed to an existing tower, plus the fact that it is not in compliance with the setbacks. I understand that the church property is, that zoning there is residential, but of course there is a neighborhood that bumps up right against that, so that has to be balanced as well. Rick, is this item on the council agenda for this week? It is, okay. So, are there other comments, questions? We could have a motion. Michael,
If I may.
Go ahead.
please. I was kind of poking at it a couple of minutes ago by asking Rick about, co-locating on the property here. It's a private company wherever it goes, regardless, and we don't own a utility, but this is a public type of service, although it is a private company that provides it. It's a utility type of thing, and so in my mind, I think of it very similar to waste management. We've got one company that provides that for good reason. It stands to reason in my mind anyway that we have one or very few locations that provide that type of communication to minimize the problem of now we're encroaching on residential area for things that aren't quite fitting into residential areas. We have property here. Yeah, we're looking ahead 15, 20 years, I got it. I don't think they take that much room. Now, having said all that, I realize it's a business decision between Verizon and the church. I got that. And then two, on what the antenna, or not the antenna, but the structure looks like. I understand where we're going with the neutral look, but I think we need to we're treading on thin ice because it's a business decision between Verizon and the church and not us. So I think we need to be careful of that, regardless of what our faiths are, right?
Yeah,
It's a separation thing.
yeah, and I understand. I'm sorry.
So that's where I'm trying to go with it. We need to be cognizant of that.
I understand that point, and again, I understand that, I respect the right of the church to promote themselves and promote their beliefs, but when I was looking at this, I had to take into consideration, what if this were Taco Bell? And Taco Bell said, hey, we're going to disguise this cell phone tower by putting our little Bell logo on the top. I don't think there would be any question that we would deny that. And I don't think that we can pick favorites, and I think the Supreme Court has said as such that you can't pick favorites between, institutions and commercial enterprises. And, we've consistently denied, we've kept very strict lines with commercial enterprises, and I don't think we should, give anybody else, way more leeway than that, just to be fair. And I'd hate to see, somebody else come through and even more commercial than it, or certainly commercial as opposed to a church, and kind of push that, saying, well, we've already set precedents for that.
Other comments or questions up here? One more thing. Go ahead.
Yes, I was gonna ask you, or respond to that. I mean, the flag, I don't know if you're looking at a condition of maybe changing the look of the site, because, I mean, we had some discussion, and I understood it to be, you didn't have enough room, and you could be, I could be completely wrong, because this is second party. But we had to move on because you see the need within the RF. So we have a flag over here. I don't know if you would consider another structure over there, and we could talk to the church about a flag over there as well. If it's a church cross and that's a problem, I just need some feedback from you, because if you're kind of not sure about the type of structure, I need to figure that one out.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, obviously it needs to be so tall, and, you know, that's sort of a separate issue. To me, it's, you know, again, not being a neutral object is the issue. You know, I think a flag is a fairly innocuous and neutral object. A tree, or, you know, merely a pole, you know, it's not sending a signal to the community about, you know, where it is or what's going on there. And so I'd be more amenable to that. My other concern, though, is that, you know, I'd be slightly reluctant to move forward with that myself because, you know, we don't have that in front of us. You know, we're saying it's a cross, and I mean, it's, you know, if it was changing the tone of the color or something, I think we might be able to give conditional approval. But I think, you know, changing it from a cross to a flagpole or a cross to a tree or whatever it is,
Yeah, I
think
can
I think we
appreciate
want
it.
to see it again before we, at least for me.
Yeah, I could appreciate that, because we would have to go back to the church and say, this is what we're thinking about, and then come back to you.
Yeah.
This has been a 4-something-year process, so 1 month will not hurt us. You know, the other thing is, you got to be careful of the discriminatory aspect of allowing AT&T there and denying Verizon across the street, because there is some telecommunication law that is borderline in that specific vicinity as well, so.
So let me ask the commission if it is comfortable with a motion, developing a motion that speaks to several of these issues. And the goal here is to be able to make a recommendation to city council, whether it is as submitted, whether it is with modification, or whether it is rejection of it. Recommending that it be rejected, it's appropriate for the body to craft a motion to have council consider and then act upon later this week.
Mr. Chairman, I wouldn't mind recommending more time be given to it to let the city and the staff take a look deeper into why can't we use the property back here, because if we can do that, however we can do that, I think we avoid a lot of the issues that are coming up here, and they don't even become talked about. It avoids a lot of problems, and then the city property becomes kind of a provider area for that technology. It doesn't ever get into a residential area. Unless technology dictates that it does because of overloading or whatnot. You know, the physics we can't avoid, it's the math, but.
Certainly we can do, we can recommend that to council as part of how we respond to this before us. But this, is there a public hearing on March 8th? That's already set, so it's appropriate that they have a recommendation to work with, I believe. The issues that have been discussed and that relate directly to the ordinance, just to review them, are the spacing, the distance from the existing tower, I'll just say it as the complete buffering and landscaping of the facility, the distance from existing residential property, the setback, and the fourth is the display itself, the appearance, if you will, in this case of the cross. Those are the issues that have been highlighted here, and that would be appropriate to call out in a recommendation if there's any modifications.
Mr. Chair, is your thought, your direction that we address the 4 items you just pointed out? Because I would support what Mr. Mike McLaughlin just said. I think that we should let the city do its due diligence and give us a little more time to see if we have an option that would be better suited in location. if that's possible for this particular motion, are we addressing, yes, we're gonna either approve or deny this item tonight?
Approve, deny, or modify, Rick, I do believe we need a recommendation to go forward. Am I correct about that?
You have to have a recommendation. I'm not sure that the.
Well, I'm sorry, the item is on council's agenda, whether there's a recommendation from this body, council's considering the item. Is that correct?
Yes.
There's an opportunity to have input into the council discussion through the recommendation of this body. Though, of course, council at its discretion could postpone action, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, this body should make a in my opinion, should make a recommendation whether to support the variances or not support the variances. But in addition to that, could include within that recommendation the concept of trying to work out with the parties to have that facility located here.
Thank you, sir.
But I do think there needs to be a recommendation on the variance requests themselves.
I think that's important for council to have that information from this body, having reviewed it. And so that's what we need from us. Actually, let me ask you to hang on.
I just have to bring that one point up about.
Actually, no, I'd like you to just wait and sit down if you would. I'd like to see if we can get a motion here. And,
Yeah, but it's important about going back to the city, you'd have to grant the same variance.
I understand.
Okay.
So since I can't do it myself, I invite someone to put a motion out to discuss.
So, Mr. Chairman, in looking at the actual agenda item, it looks like they're only asking for one variance of the distance between the two towers. But there's actually 3 other variances that we need to look at.
Rick, is that way to put it?
The original. The original request from the applicant was the separation distance between the towers. When staff conducted its review, we noticed that there were some additional variance requests that would have to be made. The landscaping is not a variance request. It's just something that needs to be required. The display, that's discretionary as to whether the commission and council believes that that requires some sort of variance. And the visual study that was submitted this evening to y'all. So I believe that the agenda item as it's worded now is sufficient because you're talking about potentially granting a specific city council approved use permit for this project with those variances. And so yes, the
That would
answer.
include, I'm sorry, that would include the setback as
That's
a
correct.
variance, though,
Yeah,
correct?
yes.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion.
Go ahead.
I'll make a motion to recommend approval by the request of Verizon Wireless for approval as specific city council approved use permit for the construction of a telecommunications tower and its variance, chapter 98 zoning. Section 268, transmission towers and antenna authorizing a reduction in the required separation distance of 2,000 feet between telecommunication towers on property zone neighborhood service district B2 located at 13218 Bandera Road, Helotes, Texas. Also allowing the variance of the setback, but must provide landscaping on all 4 sides of the thing, and not approving the display or the overall look of the tower.
Okay, is there a second for that motion?
Second it.
Ron? Okay, so in just informal language, informally, it is to recommend approval with the stipulations that it be fully landscaped to comply with the buffering aspect of the code, and that the display, in this case, the cross, not be approved, but also approving the variance for the setback, that it's within the residential setback, and it is within the 2,000 feet limit. Okay, all right, so discussion on the motion. Jeff?
My feeling is, I know this is a changing world, we need the technology. We're overloaded, everybody's trying to get bigger, backbones and everything like that. I personally don't like the location. To me, I feel it's too close to Bandera Road, it sticks out like a sore thumb. This one's set back a ways where you don't even really notice it unless the flag is really blowing. That one, even from all of the, the pictures that are shown here, driving down the road, sticks out, even without the cross, I feel. But I know we need the technology, and they're very limited on sites that they've surveyed.
Thank you. Ron, any comment?
No.
Others, discussion? Jason?
Would it be possible or feasible to add amend that recommendation to, that they would come back and present the aesthetics for final approval at a later date before this council?
That's up to the motion maker and the
Yeah.
second.
Is that acceptable to you? Is that
I
acceptable
would
to you?
accept it.
Yeah, I'd like to see something, not white, boom, there it is.
All right.
Maybe a lighter color or something like that.
Yeah, and again, I think, it's been the position of this board that we don't dictate exactly how it looks, but just that we need to see, we need to see some proposals about, a proposal or multiple proposals about what it could look like in lieu of what it presently is presented as.
I agree.
Further comment, discussion of the motion? Anyone? Yes, Mike?
I'll just reiterate, I think we would still be better served by looking into the city location. That doesn't change technology, and nobody's saying no to the technology. I think it's a better use to put it where there's other cell towers, and it's more of not a residential area. And I think we owe it to everybody to do that, so that's where I'm at.
All right, so the motion is, to recommend approval on the request by Verizon Wireless for a specific city council approved use permit for the construction of a telecommunication tower, variance to Chapter 98, Section 368, Standards for Transmission Towers and Antenna, authorizing a reduction in the required separation distance of 2,000 feet between telecommunication towers on property zoned Neighborhood District, Service District B2, and located at 13218 Bandera Road, with the stipulation that the facility be fully compliant with the landscaping and buffering requirement, and that the display is not approved, which is to say the cross appearance, and the request that the applicant return to this body with proposals for other designs. All in favor of that motion, please signal aye.
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 Opposed? One opposed.
Nay.
Two opposed.
Yes.
All right. So that is, any abstentions? So the motion is approved. This item will go to city council on the 8th. Is that the right
Thursday,
date?
yes, sir.
On public hearing. I thank people who've come out to hear this. I hope you'll be able to participate on the 8th as well. And regardless of what happens, do appreciate your input and participation in the process. Okay, we're going to move ahead. You got that? We're going to move ahead tonight to item 8 on our agenda. We recognize that many of you have to leave, and we ask that you do so quietly, though we'd love for you to stay. Item 8 tonight is discussion and action on a request by Philip Mania for approval of a wayfinding parking sign pursuant to Municipal Code of Ordinances, Chapter 98, Section 72, Old Town Helotes Special District, Subparagraph G, sign regulations for the shops at Old Towns at 14743 Bandera Road. Ask the city administrator if he would like to present any aspect of this. Is there a representative of the applicant, or is the applicant here this evening? Okay, we have questions.
Staff did review this item. As the commission knows, pole-mounted or freestanding signage is allowed for wayfinding and advertising purposes within the Old Town District. And those signs are regulated at a maximum of 20 square feet. The proposed sign is quite small, at a little under 4 square feet. And so staff doesn't have an issue with this sign at all, with the exception of the design. We don't necessarily believe that the design of this sign complies with the Old Town Helotes plan. So I'm glad that the applicant is here tonight to address that with the commission, but that, again, is staff's opinion.
Can you project the submission? Okay, thank you. Okay, so the issue to be attentive to is the design element of it as stipulated by code. It's supposed to be in keeping with the Old Town sort of aesthetic in terms of construction materials and the like. Mr. Manning, if you care to address that, please come on up. Just put your name and business address on the record for us.
Good evening. Philip Mania, 14743 Old Bandera Road. The shop's at Old Town Helotes.
So the concern about the particular aesthetic of the sign, I think one of the things you may hear from the commission is an interest in making it a little more, making it fit a little better with the rest of the Old Town appearance. So issue would be, we hope you would be amenable to that. I mean, I don't think it's a question of needing the wayfinding sign, knowing the area and knowing that that is there's a reason that you want to have that sign, but making it a little more aesthetically in sync with what's around it.
We actually have no problem doing that. We'll do whatever it takes to just drive some of the traffic, to our own parking lot. It's as simple as the fact that when we have the concerts and the events in town, parking is an issue in Old Town. I have ample parking. I'm just simply trying to get our customers off the street and into our own parking lot. It helps everybody. So we have no problem actually working on the aesthetics of it. We will actually follow whatever guideline the city would like to set for us. We will redo the sign. It's not a problem at all.
Comments, questions?
Mr. Chairman, is this sign illuminated?
No. We noticed that we built a sign, we set it up, it's not actually bolted to the structure or anything, we just use it to take a picture. We realized that evening that we may have to consider a little bit of some very low lighting, perhaps some solar lights, just pointing to it. We're talking maybe 1.5, 3 watt equivalent, what would be nothing other than just simply some solar lights for a couple of hours in the early evening to where the sign can be seen, but no more than that. The sign itself will not be lit.
Thank you.
Others?
Mr. Chairman.
Yep.
I actually drove by there today and saw that the sign was still in place, or is in place right now. It actually took me a few minutes to find it.
It is small.
Which to me is not wayfinding. Yeah, I mean, if you're looking for parking, and it took me 10 minutes to find a sign, it's like, whoa. Is there any place to get it closer to the street?
I would now,
Who owns that land right there at the
oh no,
corner?
that would be the city's right of way. So with your permission, yes. But if we bring it closer,
That was good.
right.
Well, but wait, seriously, have we not, we do have wayfinding signs in the right-of-way in Old Town.
Yes, there's one right next to this driveway.
And so is that.
What
that
does
is-
it say?
I don't know, I don't believe it says parking or anything. I mean, we could certainly add that to that sign. I mean, that's an option.
Right. Well, as you perhaps heard earlier, our role is not to tell you precisely what the sign should look like, and we would invite you to come back to us, hopefully next month, with something that fits better with the surrounding areas, maybe having a conversation with staff and the city about other options. I think there's general agreement here on what you're trying to do is fine. It's just a matter of making it look.
Absolutely, not a problem.
That's work.
Not a problem. We will resubmit, we will just redesign,
But
make it bigger.
In the interim, though, please, I encourage you to talk with the Development Services staff, city administrator, about possibilities. Yep.
Maybe he should just pull it, so he doesn't have to resubmit.
Yeah, we can do that. We can postpone the item. We want him, does he need to pull it, or can we pull it? Doesn't matter.
No, you can postpone it to the next
We're
meeting.
just gonna postpone it till the next meeting. So, and if you're not ready in April, then we'll do it the next month, but whenever you have something else.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
All right, item 9 tonight is discussion and direction. And note, this is direction. This is actually not an action item, but a discussion item. Discussion and a direction on a request by B.R. Anderson Jr. for approval of a pole sign pursuant to Code of Ordinances, Chapter 98, Section 72, Old Town of Lotus, subparagraph G, sign regulations for B Daddy's Barbecue at 14436 Bandera Road. Turn it over to City Administrator. You're here, so let Rick go first, if you would.
I don't have a lot on this item. In our agenda item request form, we essentially said that in January, the applicant did inquire with us about the possibility of reconstructing what once was a pole sign in front of, I believe it was the Hickory Hut at that time. And we have in here what the applicant wrote. Basically, the challenges that they're having, they believe they're having a visibility issue from State Highway 16. We did put in there that we normally would not be optimistic about the applicant's signage proposal. However, given that the signage was once in place and the Code of Ordinances in Old Town does allow for pole and freestanding signage, albeit at a much smaller scale, and typically for wayfinding, we encourage the applicant to, unlike many other individuals, to come before the commission and council to discuss whether this would be an option before he went to the expense of designing and engineering and constructing the sign. And so that's really what we're here for. I don't have much on the item other than. Do you have the picture I see? Yes, I do. And
Yeah, we can project that.
I'll put it up, but I'll defer to the applicant.
Sure, why don't you come on up, just put your name and business address on the record for us.
B.R. Anderson, B Daddy's Barbecue. We're at 14436 Old Bandera Road. Do you mind, can I talk for a
Yeah,
minute?
go ahead, please.
So the problem we're having is, our address is Old Bandera Road. However, my business faces Highway 16. So that's problem number one. The original building was one building. I hope y'all have all been there. And since we split the building in half and I have the back half of the building facing Highway 16, I already have a problem getting customers to find us. I did take some pictures and made some copies for y'all. They're not as nice as what I hoped for, but the first photograph here is traveling south on Highway 16. My sign is not visible until you are 75 feet away from it. At 60 miles an hour, it's very hard to see. And because of lighting, I may be one short. because of lighting requirements and so forth that the city has, as far as downward lights, et cetera. Y'all wouldn't let me backlight the sign originally when I wanted to. So as you're traveling south doing 60 miles an hour as the road is curving around, you see the sign in a blink of an eye and you're gone. If you're traveling north on Highway 16, which is, I do want to point out also, by the way, in that first picture, you see that big, beautiful, welcome to Helotes Old Town sign in the background that the city has? That's fantastic. I'm glad everybody knows it's there because you can't see mine. But traveling north on Highway 16, my sign is blocked by a beautiful clump of oak trees, which if y'all would like, I could cut them down so my sign would be visible, but I don't think that would be in anybody's best interest, although it would be some good barbecue wood. Last, this is a picture of the original sign from the Helotes General Store that was in place up until 2007, when the building changed hands, and for whatever reason, the property owner took the sign down. We need, bottom line, we need a sign similar to this to get people's attention and so that people can see us. I live in Bandera, Texas. My neighbors cannot find my restaurant. I talk to people, they drive into San Antonio every day and past it, and they're like, I've never seen it. And that's because you can't see it. So I'm asking the commission for any type of guidance, recommendations, suggestions, anything that y'all will allow me to do to advertise my business.
Great. Great, I'm sure we'll get some feedback here, so let me open it up. Who would like to jump in?
This is a historical sign we could restore.
Was
I-
lighting,
I will say, just, I just plugged it in to see what came up, and, I mean, in this day and age,
Yeah.
doesn't this get you there?
No, it puts you on the opposite side, and last year I came before the commission and we got an easement on city property, and we're allowed to obstruct a very small sign on the old Bandera Road sign that is not lit. And again, I might point out with the concerts and market days, et cetera, my sign gets blocked. If there's a car or a truck parked by my sign on Old Bandera Road, you can't see it. Again, on market days and concerts and so forth, weekends, the cars park on the highway frontage. Again, my sign is this high, a car parking on the highway blocks it.
Mr. Chairman,
Ron?
do you have signage on the back of the building?
On the Old Bandera Road side,
On Highway 16 side?
we have a small sign that is the maximum size that we're allowed to put up, 32 square feet. But again, it faces perpendicular to Highway 16, and it's hidden by trees, et cetera.
Michael?
What height would you be interested in?
Well, let's say 40, 50 feet. No, I'm joking.
Can you put a cell tower on?
I thought we might put like smoke and a cross, and, no, I'm joking.
Okay, I opened myself up.
No, I know. Any help the commission can give me would be appreciated.
would lighting help?
That sign right there, that old fence, as I understand from my landlord, was approximately 5 feet high, so we're guesstimating to the top of that sign was probably 15 feet. I know that's a stretch for y'all, and anything that y'all can give me, I would greatly appreciate. And I gotta admit, it's very, very frustrating when I rely on retail walk-in traffic for our livelihoods, but Young Brothers, no offense to them, great guys, great customers, we fish together. They have a 16-foot by 8-foot two-sided sign, and they don't rely on walk-in traffic. And I do, and you can't see my restaurant.
Rick, could you think from the city's perspective, the old sign, whatever the size of it is, the pole sign, could that be considered wayfinding?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Well, a sign with the name of the business on it, I mean, akin to the parking sign that we were just talking about. Could a sign with the
Well,
business's
pole
name
signs and freestanding signs are allowed for wayfinding or advertising purposes.
in Old Town?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, I will say
With
some.
with a different height limitation, obviously.
What's height?
It's really, and it's more so the square footage is small. It's
Right.
20 square feet.
Right. Somebody,
Well, 20 square feet, I mean, that sign right there might be under 20 square feet, but is there a height?
I would like to ask a question.
hang on a second.
Actually, Mr. Commissioner, the way y'all measure the signs, that sign right there would be way over 20 feet because y'all start at the poles at the ground
Count the poles.
and include and go up. I'm sorry.
Joe?
My question is, what would you specifically like to do? If you could do whatever you want to do, what would you want to do?
I'd love to have a sign similar to this.
Anything short of that?
Like I say, anything that y'all would grant me permission to do would be a vast improvement.
But I think part of the problem is we don't design signs.
No, I understand that.
So
I'm
it's
looking.
kind of tough for us, like we were saying earlier, we don't want to dictate.
Yeah, I understand, and like Commissioner Jason over here said earlier, y'all have been very, very strict on your signage in Helotes, and I understand that. But as a business owner, the signage requirements that I am straddled with right now are negatively impacting my business. So as far as a specific sign, you know, specific height, you know, I'm at this point, I'm at y'all's mercy.
We also have the issue of there's an existing sign there right now. I mean, the monument sign.
Well, that
So
monument
we'd be
sign will
talking
go
about-
bye-bye.
Well, right, I mean, you would trade one for the other, essentially. What about, within Old Town, and I don't recall this for Old Town in particular, off-premises signs, to deal with the cars that shoot by you and get down to the old, the turnoff onto Old Bandera, having a sign there, you know, not a big giant sign like that, but some type of signage pointing this way to, I mean, in a way that's offering you, I mean, is that permissible, I guess is the first question within Old Town.
Off-premise signage is allowed in Old Town.
I mean, that may be one avenue to address this without reconstructing that, which may not, be found in favor. Yeah.
I think I'm being straddled a little bit with the fact that while I am in Old Town, I think the Old Town signage requirements and distinctions that y'all have are really designed more for Old Bandera Road for pedestrian traffic and slow-moving traffic, whereas my business faces Highway 16. So I'm almost asking you guys to exempt me out of that historical Old Town District signage and give me permission. And quite honestly, I know with multi-tenant signs, you're allowed a little bit more room. The other tenants in the property have expressed interest that if we could get a sign that they might possibly be interested. My objective is that without sounding, I'm just gonna say it, that we're the first business that has lasted in that building since Hickory Hut closed. It has been a revolving door of restaurants, and none of them have succeeded. We've been there 2 years, we're growing like crazy, we're still growing. We wanna stay in Helotes, but I'm gonna tell you this quite honestly, that we've gotta have a sign to stay in Helotes. I cannot stay there without a sign. I've been approached by other developers offering me better locations, et cetera. I wanted to be in Helotes. I grew up in this area. I ate at Hickory Hut as a kid. I want to stay here, but I need a sign to do it.
Mr. Chair, I have a question for Rick. Looking at the first picture the gentleman provided, and I see our City of Helotes welcome sign, with the B Daddy's sign, would it be able, it has to stay in that same location and that same frame to follow within the guidelines, or could it be moved further up and still be a higher sign, but not, I guess, the equivalent to or smaller than the one? And I'm looking at this photo as my reference. I don't know if you have the ability to see this photo.
Yes, I see it.
Would it be able to be moved up somewhat and a little higher so we can have the visibility, but also follow within the guidelines of the city? That's my question.
You're asking me whether the city would move that sign closer to B Daddy's Restaurant?
The sign that we have now is the monument sign. That's, it seems like it's a little more deep in.
wants it closer to
Can
the
it
road.
move out to the street a little bit and be raised a little higher so it's a little more visible without, with still falling within our guidelines of the city? And not overwhelming our existing welcome to Helotes, welcome to our
I
Old Town
think what he's
Helotes.
asking is that monument sign already on the property line or as far, or as close to Bandera as it can be?
I don't have
It
any.
is as close to the highway frontage, as the highway easement as you can be legally. My proposal would be, quite honestly, the current monument sign is on the left side of the driveway.
You're moving it to the other side.
Moving it to the other side to get it away from the trees, elevating it. That fence is no longer there. It is now a 6-foot privacy fence to keep kids and stuff from running out onto the highway. So the bottom of the sign has to be above that, a minimum of 6 feet. The other challenge we face is, as you come around the corner from Floors, where the bicycle shop, where Hank's property is, those trees, stick out, and so I'm bottlenecked. I did call the highway department last year, and they came out and trimmed them back some, but they will not trim an oak tree, and the majority of those trees there are oak trees hanging out.
Mr. Chair, would this fall into the line of, as what we did earlier, where we could possibly pull this item and have the gentleman come back with I'm just asking.
There is no proposal here. We're just,
Yeah.
this is just a discussion.
Because I gotta say that I agree, I live in that area, and I've been here for a while now. And yes, I've been to your establishment. But even with that on the side, the sign is not seen. And I agree, and it needs to be a little more visible, but we also need to maintain what we do here in Helotes with signs. And so I think that we should address this. I think it's something that needs to be addressed. This is a very credible, small-town, mom-and-pop type business owner that we're looking at tonight, and this is what Helotes is all about. It's about the character of our city. We want to promote small business owners, and I think that I drive by there every day. I'm going to drive there after I leave this meeting. I have to go home. And you don't see it unless you've been there. And so I do agree that it needs to be a little bigger, but at the same time, it needs to fall within the guidelines that the commission will allow. So that's why I'm asking, can we get what we want, as you just pointed out, in writing, something that we can look at, that we could, vote on?
Other thoughts about this?
Mr. Chairman, looking at this and looking at the trees, the sign that used to be there, even that, at this point, would be blocked by the trees.
To a point, we've looked at it long and hard. As you're going northbound, the sign is going to be dramatically more visible. As you would come southbound, it would be more visible as well because it's elevated. My intention would be to do a double-sided backlit sign.
Just a thought here. Even just the flat signs on the way is gonna block, if it was on an angle, you'd probably get more visibility.
3 sides.
Yeah, you could make it 3-sided, one faces the building. So you wouldn't have to go because to get over the trees, it'd be 50 feet tall.
Yeah, no, we're not getting over the trees, we're getting away from the trees. I would like to have a backlit sign.
Right.
So that it's visible at night. But I guess what I really and truly am here for tonight is to kind of get a feel from y'all what you think is reasonable, and, so that if we go through this and I come back next month, that we're not then saying in April, okay, well, now change this and come back to us in May, and then come back to us in June. My hope would be to get some type of feedback from y'all so that we can design a sign and come to you next month with a proposal and hopefully get approval.
Seems like your best option is across the road.
Yeah.
Across the driveway, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Hang on a second. We go
I got a
Jeff.
question. And I don't know if this is a possibility with the state and the city or not, but have you approached the state at all about putting or having any type of, I mean, you see them all the time on the side of highways, restaurants, this exit or restaurants here. I don't know if the city has,
I don't know if the state has any signs typically. Those are on the big exit signs on the interstates. I know
there are
exactly
also
what you're
they're
talking about.
smaller too.
That, that's a thought. I can definitely approach them of that. That wouldn't hurt.
The state offers that, but and the business has to pay for it.
Well, we
But
don't
yes.
mind, yeah.
But that's
I
getting
don't know.
closer.
I-
That's getting right on the road.
Yeah, but I don't know if they would offer that on State Highway 16, or if it's something that's more for like Loop 1604. I don't know what the parameters
Yeah,
are on
so
that.
I
so.
didn't know either.
Rick, if there was, we're not talking about anything in specific, but let's assume there were some proposal. I imagine it would need some type of variance, right?
Because it's in Old Town, you would go through the creative sign provisions, but basically then you would be creating your own rules at that time.
But do we create a precedence then for future applicants, for whatever reason, in the same district, where this becomes a rationale for having to approve similar?
Well, I mean, I think yes. Any action the commission takes creates a precedence.
Do we have, what is is there a maximum height in Old Town?
Yes, there are maximum heights for the allowable types of signage, yes. And the max height is typically between 5 and 8 feet. Now, I can tell you that on Bandera Road, in the rest of the city, for a single business, that max height would be 8 feet for a single business.
Above grade or something like
And then a multi-tenant would be 15 feet on Bandera Road.
So just-
But that would have to be a monument sign, not a pole sign.
Right, so just throwing out, if he had a rock sign, rock-based sign, so the lettering and such was above the 6-foot level, and 15 feet would be his maximum height.
If it's multi-tenant.
If he,
I think what you're suggesting, Commissioner, is that to recommend that he does a monument sign in the parameters of a multi-tenant shopping center, but meet all of those criteria on Bandera Road.
Right, just sort
So
of.
it'd be in
so
compliance.
fall under some umbrella.
It would be under 66-50, commercial signs, multi-tenant shopping center signage.
What would be permitted if this were not in this particular location?
Yes, I think, but you're suggesting, you're recommending that that could be approved.
Possibility.
A possibility, yes.
I mean, I
So
think
we have some guidelines to sort of look,
yeah, I mean, I think you're getting some ideas of, there's general idea that people want to be sympathetic, but, I mean, keep in mind, you brought up about the cars that park there, the angle of the road, they're going fast. We can't solve all of that, right? And
A sign is gonna cure a lot of that.
but it'll help, I
Yeah,
agree.
It will help.
So, and getting this done in 1 month may not be possible, but I think you're getting the sense, I hope, that the commission, as well as city staff, would be willing to consider some possibilities here.
Okay.
I don't know that that is really gonna fly, right?
Well,
But,
that is
you
a
know, but I get
historical,
your
that's a
point.
historical sign, and I think we should return it to the historic Old Town District. I mean, there's a loophole there, guys. I'm giving you a loophole. No, I'm dead serious. Flores is grandfathered. Young Brothers is grandfathered. The place across the highway from me, I forget what they used to be, where they now sell the pottery, that guy's got a big, beautiful sign, but it's a new business. But he was grandfathered, even though he totally redid the sign. And, I've got a $1.5 million business that we're growing, and I'm generating revenue for the city. I'm asking for some help, and there's your loophole. We're gonna restore a historic sign to Old Town.
Well, what I would say,
Y'all are laughing, but I'm dead serious. You
and
can
I agree,
grandfather it
but
as
I
you know,
do
it
think,
was.
I do think that you hopefully getting the sense that that's not the direction we're generally going. But I do think there are mechanisms and approaches that can help address the types of issues you brought up with something creative. And what we would suggest, and again, please jump in if others have ideas about this, is that you speak directly with staff And I think you'll find that people are willing to work with you, at least this body is, to craft something that works for the city,
Okay,
because that's our job, right?
okay.
We're thrilled you're growing,
Yeah.
and you've said that several times, and that's good. But we also have to look out for the city's interests, and that has to be
So
our.
would y'all be opposed to me putting signs on my fence, et cetera, as AKA floors? I mean, I can hand paint them.
Wall signage is essentially.
I can hand paint them and make them look, tacky like theirs and put them all on the fence, I mean, you grandfather that.
I think we'd be willing to consider a variety of options, including off-premises signs down the road a bit. I think there are ways to address this
Okay.
that still fit with the spirit of what the code is trying to do, which
I
has
mean,
to
because
serve
I quite
everybody.
honestly had asked about painting the entire roof white and painting BBQ in big red letters, and my landlord was like, go for it. But Ernest told me that would be considered a sign.
Yes, that would be considered a sign. I think, just for the applicant and the commission's sake, what you want to hear tonight from the commission is whether they will even consider that type of pole sign.
Well, I think
In
what
the
I need
future.
to do is come back with 2 or 3 options for y'all next month.
Good idea.
I think that'd be fine, and again, I don't want to speak for others. Pole signs for wayfinding purposes, they have their place. I don't think the commission's general approach has been to go for that type of thing. But I think we're willing to consider a variety of approaches, and I don't think that's the only option here that could serve your purposes.
Okay.
Others, please chime in.
I would like to say that I could appreciate the historic-looking sign, but as long as it meets guidelines over here with the city, but yes, I think we need to have that character of Old Town still, and even if it's not the actual sign itself, but a replica meeting the guidelines that we allow would be a great addition to Old Town off of Highway 16. It would just add to the firepower that we already have down there. So I appreciate it. I would support it. But I do agree with the gentleman, bringing in 1 or 2 or 3 options for the commission to look at
Sure.
would really get the conversation going on this. But I do agree with Mr. Chair that, this is a good start.
Jeff, did you have? No? Okay. Jason.
I think that the applicant's point about the scale of Bandera Road is well taken, that, we allow, 8 and 12-foot signs respectively, and other stretches of Bandera Road. And, I think we would be willing to entertain something approaching that scale of things,
Okay.
provided that it would, meet the other requirements of Old Town Helotes sign ordinance.
All right. Hopefully this is helpful to you. I'd like to
I will.
move our agenda. I'd encourage you to be in touch with staff
Yeah,
before you
I will.
walk back in with something.
I'll see y'all next month with options.
There you go. Good to
Thank
see
you
you.
very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Number 10 tonight, discussion and action on a request by Sherry Skeens for approval of a pole, freestanding, and wall signage, including the requisite variances to the Code of Ordinances, Chapter 66 signs for 10 Oak Storage at 16304 Bandera Road. Ask the city administrator if he has any comments on this. Is the applicant here this evening? Yes. Okay, if we have questions.
Yes, sir. To the first requested sign, it is a pole sign or a freestanding sign that they're requesting, and so it's outright prohibited by code. The applicant, of course, knows this and is asking for a variance to that prohibition. So we did not review it at a staff level any further because it's completely prohibited in that area. The wall sign, the parts of the sign that are not compliant with code are the size. The code allows, assuming that the applicant is correct on their application, that the linear footage of that building is 36 feet 2 inches. The code would allow 36 square feet of wall signage on that building. The proposed wall signage, and I know this is going to sound weird, is anywhere between 37.5 square feet to 80 square feet. And I certainly know that it's not approaching 80 square feet, but the applicant did not submit wall sign plan that actually had the dimensions of each of the sections of the wall sign. And so if you round it all out and just go with the biggest thing by the footage, it's 80. If you actually take the smallest piece, height, and average it out, it's about 37 and a half. Regardless, I know that it's too large per our code for that building. The other thing is the design. Staff didn't have a issue with the design generally, but we did want to bring it up to the commission that you may want to consider whether the use of the color red is appropriate on that sign. Other than that, we believe the wall signage is compliant.
Okay. The
being
applicant,
serious.
did you want to speak to it at this point? Would that be helpful? Or if you just put your name and business address on the record for us?
Sherry Skeens, 16304 Bandera Road. And I've invited James with Alamo Sign Solutions to help me.
Fair enough. So, let me first open it up here for questions.
Mr. Chairman, on the wall sign, what is your estimated square footage of that?
Would we be more precise than what we have now?
Yeah, we're from 37 to 80.
It's actually is about 37 and a half square feet. No,
And that's counting, I'm sorry, is that including
That's
the little
including the
logo?
cube.
Logo and everything?
Yes, it's including the cube, right.
And the linear footage is 36 feet, 2
It's
inches.
actually, well, the square footage of that surface wall is actually 96 square feet.
No, the linear footage of that wall.
The linear linear footage is 36.2, yeah.
So it's
What
over
we
by
measured
approximately
out.
1.3 feet.
Yeah, you guys have a weird calculation to that. It's 1 square foot per linear foot, is that what it is?
Yes.
So we're pretty much butting up right against your limitations, but, and it fits into the previous person that was standing here with regards to sign, square footage and height and everything else.
The image that we have staying on the wall signage with the storage, is
It's
that-
actually not, it's not red, it's
What color
orange.
is it? It's orange, well, all right, it's
Yes.
orange. That solves that, right? All right, so, and you've heard, I mean, I think, and again, I don't want to speak for others, but the pole sign is just not an allowable sign. And so you'd have to redesign something different unless others would like to offer a variance. Our tendency is not to permit those type of
Okay, well,
signs. So
I-
distinguish the pole from the wall in that regard.
Actually, the sign that's there now is actually on 2 poles, except they're wooden. So what we're trying to,
Signage.
I'm sorry, yes,
Yes.
this is the existing sign here now.
Well, with a new face.
Yeah, we're gonna use the existing sign, just changing, updating the face, if you will. But what we're wanting to do as well is to also upgrade the look of the business. Part of the other reason why we're wanting to elevate the sign and we're trying to introduce the 2 poles is because her neighbor has, in my opinion, our opinion, an illegal sign. That's an off-premise sign. I don't know if that's been approved by you folks or not. I believe it's not. I think I've spoken with Ernest about it. It's for the Oak Lawn,
Those were prior,
Oak Valley Golf Course.
Which blocks are
yeah, it's those signs that you're referring to were prior to the city's receipt of property from the city of San Antonio. Basically, we had an ETJ change. So, yes, there are grandfathered signs along Bandera Road because they were in San Antonio's ETJ prior to Helotis's.
Okay.
But any changes after the change is when we started enforcing our code.
Okay. Which is.
And hold on one second, the current pole sign that is there is similarly permitted, is that correct?
I'm sorry, the
By which
question,
I mean, could they change out the signage?
they're proposing to change the whole structure of the sign.
No, but I'm saying if they change just the face of the sign.
Yeah, they could
that's
change the
right.
face. It's
It's where
considered
you change
maintenance.
the structure, the height, the whole business. That's where the issue comes in.
Yes, but, well, my whole point is, you're saying that a pole sign is prohibited. It's actually on 2 poles. So,
New pole signs are prohibited.
So let's be clear,
Existing
yeah.
pole signs are grandfathered.
so in that case, then if you are just, your point is not liking to see poles, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so then something like this will then be more feasible, where if we would put a skin around the poles whereby we would hide the poles so the poles wouldn't be visible.
Essentially making a base.
I mean, we're updating the face, we're trying to beautify their business, trying to make it a little more presentable. With all the other new businesses that are coming in, they're trying to present their
And
businesses.
trying to make us a little more visible, too.
Sure. So we support and allow monument signs, for example. So simply wrapping in fabric or whatever up 2 poles wouldn't qualify. But a monument sign, as I think maybe you've seen earlier tonight, certainly would. You would still have certain height limitations. What is the?
It's 8 feet.
So,
Right.
whether that meets your requirements or not, or you'd want to
Well,
request a variance. But I do think that the starting point is you've presented us with a pole sign, and
Yeah.
we'll have a motion about it, but I think the concern is that that's not something.
Well, the biggest issue is the reason we're wanting to elevate the sign at all is because of this sign that's next to us on the property adjacent to their property.
Okay.
Yeah, we have very little frontage on Bandera, so by the time you get past their sign, you're already past our driveway.
What is the proposed height?
I'm sorry, sir?
What is the proposed height of your sign?
We're proposing between 9 and 11 feet. The city
Wow.
ordinance is 8 feet.
And the current sign you have now is 8 feet.
The current sign now sits at 4 foot tall.
It's 4 foot tall?
Yes, sir.
So if you got to the current to 8 feet, you would be doing,
We
Better.
would be okay, yes, with that? I'm
Thank you.
assuming you'd be okay with that?
Yes.
Yes. Any kind of elevation would be helpful, so that the business can be recognized prior to the potential customers passing
8
my
feet
by.
is limited.
Ron?
Rick, square footage wise, if they went up to the monument with 8 feet, how big would their sign be able to be?
You mean the sign face? Or
Yeah, the face, yeah.
The sign face as it is now is 4 foot by 11 feet, 11 and a half feet, actually.
For a single business monument sign, it would be 84 square feet would be the maximum.
Base and all, or the face?
We don't measure just the face, we measure everything.
Yeah.
So it'd be 84 square feet.
And I think the monument would require landscaping around the bay, it would require a masonry base and landscaping around.
Yes.
Okay, or using the same sign, putting a new face on it.
Right, you could leave, I guess, what's in place right now and just change the face.
and the changing the face is because it'll be newer? Is what is the point?
Right
Why
now-
not leave the same
well,
face you have?
There's a new owner, and the previous owner had little slip-on letters you could put in there, and these are plastic, I guess,
I've seen it.
laminate things that have been placed on there. It's just,
It's like a marquee?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So you're good with keeping this and just putting a
No.
new face?
Yeah,
I don't think she's saying that.
I thought I heard that as an option.
Keep that. This is, what we're proposing, and I'm here as the management company, so it was the owner that actually, he couldn't be here tonight, that was actually interested in this one. So, but I still see that even with the elevation, this sign blocks it, but maybe it's more visible when you're right there. So if this is strictly prohibited, I don't know that,
Is it still called the same business as it was before the new ownership came in? Is it still called 10 Oaks?
it is,
So the name hasn't changed.
right, we bought the name rights also.
You have a
Or
prominent,
own-
you have a prominent, colorful business. Again, I drive by there all the time, I hate to say this, but you have a very prominent, colorful business that we all know is there. All of us that are in that area, we use that as our landmark for sharing with people who are not familiar with that area, that's a way to get to a certain part of that area of the city.
Is that
So
right?
it is a prominent, I'm just sharing, I've lived here quite a while now, so it is the facade and the exterior of the building. Yes, I agree with you on the sign, but you do have a nice structure. It's colorful, it's well lit, and we all know about the two mannequins that are in the glass. You know, they stand out like a sore thumb. Everybody sees them.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna put it out there. I mean, put it on record. So I can understand that about the sign, but again, the character of Helotes, we want to make sure that we follow within the guidelines, but, I mean, if we raise it a little bit, that's going to be an improvement, but I'm also hearing that if you get a new face, I mean, that could also help, so whatever you
Yeah,
guys want to
so-
bring to us
so
is
we'll-
what would be
We'll have
helpful.
to get back with the owner and see what his thoughts are about monument signage versus this.
Mm-hmm.
Because obviously, there's costs that are involved in those
Yes.
things too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
How far back from the highway is this sign?
It's about 30 feet back off the road.
Off
Yes,
the
sir.
road.
So it's set back quite a bit. That's the other issue that we're having for visibility purposes, is that it's set back quite a bit.
Had you looked at bringing it up closer to the road and doing a
There's
monument?
easement issues there.
What's that?
There's easement issues.
Oh, okay, so it's
We
not.
we can't come further
Okay.
towards the road because of the easement that sits in front there.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
we would love to, but
Okay.
That was one of our first ideas, but that was,
It's just hard telling from the picture on how
Yes,
the
sir.
highway goes across
right,
there.
yeah.
And guess, another thought that occurred to me, just looking at these photos tonight and thinking of options with these other people talking, is maybe doing the letters on top of the building on this side also. I don't know.
Regarding the wall sign, which is a little bit over what is permitted, the commission does have the leeway of allowing extra
25%.
25%, so that wouldn't need a variance. The color is orange. Is the wall sign illuminated?
Yes, sir.
It would be internally illuminated.
Right. Thank you.
So is it my understanding that if we were to wrap these poles with an aluminum skin like this and then add the landscaping, that would be suitable? Raising it up to 8
Requires
feet?
a masonry base as well, is that? Yeah.
Masonry base is
You would need, require a masonry base, okay,
I think it's 18
18
inches.
18 inches.
A minimum of 18 inches.
okay.
could be more. I think we'll see what type of motion comes up, but if, a next step may be to get with Ernest and staff about that possibility.
Okay.
So, I think we're good, and maybe we can get a motion here. There's two different signs that we're talking about, so
And this is a recommendation.
this is a recommendation, thank you.
And Chair, that can be split, because if the wall signage, if y'all are okay with the wall signage,
But they're both recommendation items because they both would require a variance.
that is correct.
Right.
But when we go to council, it may be easier at the council level if we say the wall signage is no longer an issue because
Right.
P and Z has approved a certain thing, so.
Okay.
Are you saying, Mr. Rick, that if we approve the sign, that we don't need to address the wall signage?
The variance request primarily was for the pole sign.
Yes, sir.
If the wall sign is compliant with code, then that doesn't need to be addressed at council.
So it doesn't need to be a recommendation for that one?
That is
If we
correct.
split it, okay.
There is no current wall sign at that business, correct?
Correct, yes, sir.
All right, so a motion, or we can break it. Somebody wants to offer one of two, maybe the easiest way. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Mr. Chair, I'll take a stab at it.
Go ahead. And you could break, like we said, you could break it into two. Make it simple. Number 10.
Number 10, motion to recommend for approval, request by Sherry Skeens for whole freestanding and wall signage, including requisite variances to municipal code of ordinance, chapter 66 signs for 10 Oak Storage located at 16304 Bandera Road, Helotes, Texas, 78023. Board,
You can leave that off.
with the modification of the pole sign being a monument sign that falls within code of the city of Helotes would be my motion.
Is there a second for the motion?
I'll second it. I'll second
Joe, okay. So the motion is to recommend approval of this item with the modification that the pole sign be
Converted into a
converted into a
monument sign.
monument sign. So let's talk about the motion. And let me just ask for clarification. Is your intent with this motion for them to return to this body for approval of that monument sign?
Yes, sir.
So would we need to cleave that from this, Rick? I would think we would.
I would flip the commissioner's motion, and I would suggest that the motion be amended to deny the variance request. And then have a caveat that the commission would be willing to look at modifying that sign into a monument sign as per code. Because you're actually denying the variance request.
Right, because the way the motion is stated, he's approving the pole sign if you make it a monument sign. And it's not as clear.
I can do that. I can do that. So I'll restate can I do that for the record, or do I need to?
Yeah, no, go ahead, and then Joe will hopefully
Okay.
agree to it.
So the motion is to deny the request by Sherry Skeens for the pole, freestanding, and wall signage, including requisite variances to municipal code of ordinances, chapter 66 signs for 10 Oak Storage located at 16304 Bandera Road, Helotes, Texas, 78023. But to encourage the company to come back with a monument sign that falls within the city of Helotes guidelines to be considered for approval by the commission.
So I'm actually going to ask, and I hope I don't offend you.
No, I'm
If you
just
would
putting it
withdraw
out
the
there.
motion altogether, and if we could separate it, because the way you just worded it, it was to deny everything. And so I think it might just be simpler if we could do.
Separate it.
Just have one
completely?
motion, make one motion for either the wall sign or the pole sign. Let's do them separately.
I told you I was gonna take a stab. It's a big stab.
Somebody want to jump in and maybe,
His motion.
Jason's going to go for one.
Okay.
Thank you though, Mario.
I pulled mine.
I tried.
Mario, so you're pulling yours, right?
Yes.
I'll pull mine.
He's pulled his.
Automatically pulled it.
Thank you, Jim.
Regarding discussion and action on a request by Sherry Skeens for approval of pole freestanding and wall signage, including variances to municipal code of ordinances, chapter 66 signs for 10 Oak Storage. I would recommend approval of the wall-mounted sign, but recommend disapproval of the pole-mounted sign, encouraging the applicant to return with a monument sign meeting the city's ordinances.
I think we could work with that. Even though we're not separating, does it have to be a recommendation on the wall? No? So it shouldn't be recommendation.
Doesn't have to.
But it could still be within the same motion. If he
Yes.
amends it. Would you amend it?
You don't have to say anything about the wall sign.
I would encourage y'all to make this two motions.
I'm trying.
Two motions.
Do it again.
Two motions, okay.
This is a tough
Just give us one.
So,
Just give us one motion.
Okay, so first motion is to approve the wall sign. And the second motion,
Well, let's just do one.
Okay.
What, the motion as submitted?
yes.
All right, is there a second on the?
I will second
Ron
that.
will second. So the motion is to approve the wall signage as submitted by Sherry Skeens for 10 Oaks Storage at 16304 Bandera Road. Is there a second for that?
Second.
There was, I'm sorry. So now it's searching, sorry.
And this is with the other understanding, Chairman, that we are utilizing the 25% rule.
That is correct.
Okay.
With,
Can I add that?
that's fine. In other words, it's as submitted, so that's
Yes.
the 25%.
Adding with 25.
So discussion of the motion. Jason, do you have anything to say about the motion for the wall signage?
I'm getting the sense there's some concern about the color.
Well, you got a motion though, so it's your motion that you've made.
Want to ask for a color less intense than orange.
The photograph shows the color much better than that. I don't know if you can see this from.
You could send it around, that'd be helpful.
Yeah, bring it up, please.
Did you second? You said second, I'm sorry.
Yeah, start with Tim.
It's orange.
So, Ron, do you have anything on the motion?
I was just adding that we added the 25%. Bringing it to the 37 square feet.
So is there other discussion on this particular motion? The motion again is just on the wall sign.
Chair, my only concern is that bright orange being illuminated at night coming around Bandera Road. I've asked other companies to tone down their signs a little bit.
Mr. Chair, I agree totally with that. The color needs to be more neutral, especially since there's no wall signage there now. It's gonna be a surprise. So it needs to fall into to what we've been doing. And, you know, the color scheme of Helotes when we're doing wall signage, it's something we've talked to other companies, we've had this conversation before. I would think it would continue with this vendor as well.
So, Michael, did you, no? So at this point, we have a motion on the floor. Jason has the ability to amend it with,
The applicant
Ron's
consider
approval?
the whole thing to be white? Is that a possibility?
There you go. She's already got it. Boom. Already got it.
I like it when people come prepared.
Yes.
Go.
Option there,
Okay.
with the exception of the logo, the cube.
Okay. And we have,
What do you mean with the
Much better.
The cube, same cube.
Yeah.
The storage portion will be white in color.
Would you amend, it's still lit, correct? Yeah. Still
Yes,
lit,
it's
yeah.
still lit, yes.
So would you amend your motion for the full sign, the text to be, just the text?
yes,
To be
amending.
Is that a
the
lighted
propo-
sign?
Amending the motion to be white.
White, yeah.
Yes, all white text.
Much better.
Yes, sir.
All right, so the motion, I'm going to read it back. Has everybody had their say? Good. The motion is to, and this is still approval. Motion is to approve the wall signage for 10 Oak Storage at 16304 Bandera Road, with the stipulation that the text all be in white, and with the explicit acknowledgement that this is allowed to exceed the size limitation. All in favor of the motion, signal aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that motion carries,
And that would be motion B.
whichever way you want to do it. So now we need a motion regarding the pole sign.
Sure. On discussion and action on a request by Sherry Skeens for approval of the pole, freestanding, and wall signage, including requisite variances to the Municipal Code of Ordinances, Chapter 66 signs for 10 Oak Storage located at 16304 Bandera Road, Helotes, Texas. We are recommending denial of the pole sign and encourage the applicant to resubmit as a monument sign per city code requirements.
Is there a second?
Second.
Michael, discussion? Discussion? Any discussion on the motion? Okay, so the motion is to recommend denial of the request for the pole sign for 10 Oak Storage at 16304 Bandera Road, and encouraging applicant to discuss monument signage with the city staff. All in favor of that motion, signal aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Now, that item, that still goes to council, correct, Rick?
On,
Thursday.
yes, no. It either goes on Thursday or it goes to the subsequent meeting. I don't have that in front of me.
But either way, that pole sign is only a recommendation from this body, so council still will have to act on it. Thank you for being here, for your patience. Okay.
And that would be motion C.
A was pulled, right?
It was still on.
Right.
It is, Chair, it is on Thursday's meeting.
Thursday's meeting, okay. Okay. This is the point in the evening where I thank everybody who's still here for being here. Sorry it's taken a while, but there's a lot that we're going through. Item 11 tonight is a discussion and action on the preliminary and final subdivision plats pursuant to Code of Ordinances, Chapter 78, subdivisions, establishing the Lago Vista Acres Unit 2 subdivision, lots 3 and 4, Block 6, out of the J.A. Torres survey. City Administrator, any discussion on this item?
No, sir.
Is there an applicant here tonight for that? Okay, in case we have any questions, and I don't know that we will. Are there any comments, discussions, questions regarding item 11? You should have the plat with your material. If there are no questions,
Question or two.
okay, go ahead,
Mr. Chairman.
please.
The gray area, that's I guess a flood zone, if I was reading this correctly,
Which area are you referring to?
or drainage.
Yes, that is I believe it's the 100-year floodplain.
Okay,
Correct. I'm Javier Alonso with Kimley Warren.
If you put your business address on record, or property address, that is.
That property address is lot 3 and 4 for Lago Vista Acres Unit 2. Kimley Horn is 601 Northwest Loop 410, San Antonio, Texas 78216.
So that is, say again what it was? It's a floodplain,
Yes, so the gray area in question is the floodplain.
100-year floodplain.
Yes, sir, as studied by FEMA.
and presumably they'd have to make modifications to grading in order to get access to that property, it appears.
No, sir. So actually, these two lots will be annexed as part of the Los Reyes HOA, and there is a common access easement on the lot just south of lot 215, which is how these two lots will have access. So they will not intentionally have access across Wild Lake or Lago Vista.
So they'll be going south, you said?
Correct.
Yeah, they'll be going south, and the two other lots that were previously platted will actually go off of Lago Vista, if I'm correct.
Yes, the first phase, which were lot 1 and 2, are directly off of Lago Vista.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Where's the entrance, sir? The entrance and exit to this area?
There is a common access easement on the lots to the south. There will be a road that will take them to those two lots. It's not shown on this plat.
So it'd be, the access would be through lot, what is that, 213 or 219?
Through 219, there is a collection of lots to the south, I believe it's,
You point, just for the benefit of the commission, you can approach where that will be.
This is lot 219 here, and this is the cross-access easement that actually takes you across way down here to these other lots that could not fit on here. And per this common access easement, all three of these lots will have access through it, as well as these two lots. And this is a paved and private road as per the agreement of these lot owners.
Okay, it is, and yeah, I can see it is marked on this plat request, okay. Okay.
Anybody else? Thank you.
Thank you.
We can have a motion, please?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to recommend approval on a preliminary and final subdivision plat pursuant to Municipal Code of Ordinances, Chapter 78 subdivisions, establishing the Lago Vista Acres Unit 2 subdivision, lots 3 and 4, Block 6, County Block 4556, Bear County.
I'll second.
Michael, any discussion? Jeff? Mike?
No, good, thank you.
Anyone else? The motion is to approve preliminary and final subdivision plats pursuant to code, chapter 78 subdivisions establishing Lago Vista Acres, Unit 2 subdivision, lots 3 and 4 and block 6 out of the J.A. Torres survey. And I believe we said recommend, did we not?
Yes.
Recommend. All in favor of this motion signal aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion is approved. Do you know if, Rick, this one's on this week for council?
Yes, sir, it is.
So March 8th. Thank you. Thank you for sticking around. Number 12 tonight is discussion and action on a request by Visa Wash for approval of monument sign pursuant to Chapter 66, Section 49, commercial signs, single business use monument type for the wash tub at 12462 Bandera Road. City Administrator, if you'd like to present anything on this, do we have a rep of the applicant here tonight?
Yes, sir, they are here. Staff reviewed this item. We, generally speaking, it is in compliance with the monument signage regulations. The only suggestions that staff has is that you place within your motion that the monument base be a minimum of 18 inches in height, and that's because we couldn't adequately tell that the base was exactly 18 inches or greater, and that the monument sign be placed within a landscape setting extending a minimum of 2 feet from each sign face.
Per code.
Per code, yes.
Okay. Open it up for comments and questions if we have. In fact, I have, if you don't mind, one of you coming up. Just give us your names and business address.
I'm Rick Algie, Director of Fixed Operation for Visa Wash, the wash tub. This is our sign contractor.
J.D. Keller with Keller Signs.
So, question I have regarding the sign, it's an illuminated sign, if I understand correctly. What part of it is illuminated? Wait, if you could put it up, sorry.
All of it.
I mean, is the whole thing illuminated, or?
White face, yeah.
Just the words, the wash tub, and then the logo underneath it, actually. So just the white lettering up top, it shines through on the back, and then this section right here.
So the red does not produce light out.
No.
It's opaque.
Anybody else have questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
Why does the sign need to be illuminated? If it's, does the business open at night? I'm just,
No, the reason is just exposure after hours. So as people are driving home after work, you know, we're closed at 6, and that gives us visibility till midnight. We usually run our signs till.
I understand.
Generally, what are the operating hours?
Monday through Saturday, we're from 8 to 6, and Sunday is 9 to 5. And we did email over earlier today the actual, a better rendering of the landscape. I sent Ernest earlier our landscaping, all
Can you
that
share
stuff.
or start down that
After
way?
it was clarified that we needed to be 18 inches of stone.
Okay. We'll still include that in a motion, but
Okay, that's
that's
fine.
good you already got it, so.
Perpendicular.
And the side is not illuminated?
No, it's an aluminum housing, that red portion is, so it's a solid, hard structure that's no light comes through.
That's the address, yeah. 12 inch, okay. Yes, with the base, that's good. Other questions?
I'll offer motion.
Yeah, go ahead, Joe. Thank you, guys.
Okay.
Go ahead, Joe.
Okay. I will propose approval of a request by Visa Washington Corporation for a monument sign pursuant to Municipal Code of Ordinance, Chapter 66 sign, Section 6649, commercial sign business for the wash tub located at 12462 Bandera Road, Otis 78023.
And can you roll into that regarding the landscaping and monument base.
Yes, including a base and landscaping according to the code.
Richard seconds that. Joe or Richard, any discussion?
No, looks good to me.
Anyone else? Jeff, please?
I just have a question, Mr. Chair. Does the address have to actually be on the base also? Or is it okay just on the side of
It has to be on the sign.
Sign, anywhere, I think
Yeah,
it's good.
okay.
So the motion, yep, sorry.
Quite a lot of red.
I was
and
gonna ask-
I
I was
respect
gonna ask
the, you know,
about that
we've
because-
had a,
I almost made it.
I tried.
Yeah.
Tried.
Actually, on the side view, the red won't be as much, it's only a
Can,
I was.
we're actually on public access right now, so would you mind coming up to the podium, please? And I will state that the reason that staff did include that suggestion in the prior, but not in this one, this actually is a part of their logo.
Yeah.
So the other Ten Oak storage, that different color, it didn't affect it as much as it would, I mean, I've never seen a wash tub logo that isn't red.
Yeah.
Does that make
yeah,
sense?
I
So-
think we've had that discussion about some other cases,
KFC?
for another, another discussion. Just throwing it out there, I mean, would they be willing to entertain, the black or dark bronze sides and just keeping the face, the red logo color?
And I'm going to speak freely on that topic. In the prior discussions we've had with our building design, we modified the complete building to fit into the Helotes stone, because that's not our image. Our image is that red logo, so I would rather not entertain that, because that is what people are going to see out on the street. That is our logo. That's what we're known by, the crimson red barn. And
I mean, you just,
because
you'd
our
see
bu-
that, you'd still have the crimson red barn and the white. I'm just saying the sides of the, like, the end view.
Make
you
them
would
black.
see- You would see like.
I'll
a
do black on the sides if that's,
Yep.
if that gets the deal done. Because the sides are only a foot wide. So-
2 foot wide.
Well, no, it's,
One.
it got reduced down.
Okay, the drawing, ours is,
The
okay.
one that I passed around, well, it'll show you, it's 1 foot
Okay.
wide.
Okay, very good.
That's easy, if that gets the deal done.
That's fine.
And we'll go with white address numbers.
Yeah. Good.
So the motion was, you amend your motion, Joe?
Yes, to include black strips of 1 foot on each side.
And that was
That's fine.
Richard? So discussion of the motion. Any further now that we've done that? I think I'll just say from my personal perspective, the fact that the red is not illuminated is the more critical component of how this commission has approached things. So personally, I was fine with the red on the sides, but thank you for accommodating the commission on this. The motion is to approve the request by Visa Wash for the monument sign pursuant to Chapter 66, Section 49, commercial signs, single business use monument type for the wash tub at 12462 Bandera Road, with the stipulation that the monument base be 18 inches at minimum in height, and that there be 2 feet of landscaping around the base. In other words, that both conform to code, and that the sides, each side of the sign be black as opposed to red. All in favor of the motion, signal aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion is approved. Thank you all.
And Mr. Keller actually did our sign out front, so, y'all.
All right, item 13 tonight, discussion and action on a request by Facility Solutions Group for approval of a pole freestanding sign, including requisite variances to the Code of Ordinances, Chapter 66 for TND Moravitas Concrete Contractors at 10511 Shanefield Road. And I would ask the city administrator to present the item. You must be, thank you for waiting around.
Thank you, Chair. This, again, is a pole sign. The Code of Ordinances prohibits a pole sign, and so that is, those are our comments.
City Administrator, to clarify one thing, we were talking earlier about wayfinding signs within Old Town. There's not a wayfinding pole sign wayfinding exception within the rest of the district, is that
No, sir.
correct? All right. And would you mind putting up the
Yes, sir.
image? Open it up for comments, and invite you up, you can put your name and the business address on for us.
Sure. My name is Nick Harris. I'm with Facility Solutions Group, 3003 Northeast Loop 410, San Antonio 78218. Basically, what I guess we created here was a hybrid, meaning it wasn't intended to be what we considered a permanent monument sign for the business. It's what we define as an incidental or a wayfinding sign or a directional sign, which the city of Helotes does not have those kind of criterias laid out for this type of design. Of course, economically, to turn this into a permanent sign to meet the monument sign ordinance was just out of the way, because the intent of this type of sign is just to allow the traffic on Shanefield Road and off the highway to have access onto the property. The property is kind of elongated. If you look at the site map, and he's got several businesses, he's got storage, the concrete, I think he has an office building, but I don't, and I could be wrong, I didn't double check, but I believe there's no freestanding signs there at all
There's,
at this point.
I didn't hear you said, there's what?
There's no other freestanding signs at this location. So basically, based on our conversations with the gentleman, and one of the things I kind of looked at this again to kind of gear it towards more of an incidental real estate type of sign is to decrease the logo and the name and increase the arrow and even put the word entrance on there to make it more like a 50-50. In most municipalities, they allow what they call incidental directionals as long as they don't exceed 32 square feet, no more than 8 foot in height. They can be made out of wood, pipe, steel, single pole, double pole, but they don't have to meet the ordinances as regarded to be what they classify as permanent signage, such as monuments in your area. And that's why we're here today. There was no set definition in the code to permit this as presented.
And there is an existing sign?
Not that I believe, no, I mean, I didn't drive by there before I came over here, to be honest, but I've been told that there's nothing there.
So I'm just interpreting the relocation, it was where it was.
Oh, because they put it, when I looked at it, I said, hey, we gotta meet a 25-foot visual. I gotta clear this ingress and egress easement, so I placed it. I didn't have a graphic designer to change it, to be honest, so I kind of marked it, saying I'm gonna meet the code.
Goes inside the pole.
It's gonna go inside the property line. It's gonna meet all the basic requirements. The issue really was the construction standards and the message we were trying to relay to the general public, and mainly, just to give the traveling public the opportunity to know that you need to turn this driveway to get to this particular business. He's got a short frontage.
Comments, questions? Ron?
Chairman, you're saying this is a temporary sign. Were you planning on another sign later?
Well, that's what I was gonna tell the customer, that based on the, his ordinance, hey, let's come up with some kind of permanent monument that meets code. And at the same time, we can still kind of put, and I don't think it's disallowed, that we can still add that directional copy on the permanent sign at some future date. In other words, I'm gonna have his advertisement, his logo, but, maybe a little 2 foot of it, I could say entrance with a little arrow. But for now, it's just basically, we're just trying to get this kind of a flow of traffic to get to the property, to enter and exit that property accordingly. And originally, we thought it was actually San Antonio's ETJ, but after talking to Ernest, it's right on the cusp of the new ETJ that was given to Helotes. And that's why we told him we need to submit applications to the city of Helotes.
Comments, discussion, anything else? I mean, you've been here all night, so you've heard the
Oh,
discussion.
I know, exactly.
But I think maybe,
Mr. Chair, I have one question.
yeah, go ahead.
Sure.
Is the sign, is it on property right now? Is it built? Is it there?
It's not built right now at all. This is a proposed. And that's why, actually, the applicant went to the city himself with this documentation, and that's when he was denied, because he said, hey, we don't have a definition of this type of sign, so get with the sign contractor. So of course he called us, and we said, okay, let's take a look at it. And we said, oh, well, there's no definition for this type of sign to be allowed, unless it's a pole sign, permanent monument with the 18-inch brick and all that other good stuff. And that's why we had to come before you guys today.
Yep, question, I get the notion of a temporary sign, but one of the problems we've had is how do we enforce, how, we'll give you a time frame or whatever, but just to set that aside for a second, what's to stop him from putting it on the little wall there? I mean, it's only another, 4 feet further back. It seems like it's plenty visible.
I probably could, but it's only gonna give visibility on that one side if you're coming down this side in Shanefield. But if you're coming the other side, you won't be able to see it at all. So I gotta get it somewhere out closer to the street, and the closest I can get it to is within, I'm gonna say at least, off the top of my head, I'll be 2 feet behind that private property line, which is that curb cut you see. The back one, not the front one, the back one. Because that front one, really, in my mind, is you got the 2-foot sidewalk, then you got the ingress, egress easement, and then you'll see the second curb cut. In most instances, that's considered your private property line. So that's where I want to place the placement of this new sign there. So that'll give me visibility on both sides of the roadway.
All right, thank you.
No problem.
A motion would be in order, and we can talk about it.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion.
This is a recommendation.
Recommendation?
Recommendation item, yeah.
May I actually interrupt for just 1 second, because I do have a question that may influence the commission's action tonight. So is this, I do have a question for you, is this a new business that has gone in here?
As far as I know, no.
Come back up.
Oh, I'm sorry. As far as I know, no. I think the problem that's come about in the most recent is the people trying to enter this particular business, or to, I guess, catch that driveway access into the business.
But you said, if I understood you right, there's a number of businesses out there,
He's the one owner,
but he's the one owner.
yeah.
So,
As far as I know, because when I looked at the site map, if you look at the site map, it has like, what, 3 buildings on there? So storage, outside storage, it has the concrete manufacturing, I guess he has trailer storage.
yeah, I mean, we could permit this without going to the commission or to council if it was done on a temporary sign basis, which would be a maximum of 90 days, but the Development Services Department can issue an extension of 30 days, so 120 days.
120 days. And then see if he wants the option of coming back in with a permanent sign that would incorporate both his logo and maybe would we be able to add the directional? Meeting entrance with the arrow?
I don't think that's a problem.
I think the sign is the entrance, really.
But we still want to tell traffic you turn here. In other words, I want to give that, to me, the logo's not the most important thing. The most important thing is enter. That's why I said, when I looked at that language on the artwork, I said, because this wasn't developed by me, I just said, you know what? If I go to the city of San Antonio, I said, let me have one of those, but I'll be 50-50, 50% logo and name of business and 50% of the incidental message I want to give. Enter, exit, watch for traffic, watch for kids, stuff like that. And that's why I kind of threw that, maybe if we resubmit it with the drawing being a little bit more incidental, directional versus commercial.
The code doesn't say for a temporary sign that it can't do a directional sign. So as long as this is meant to be temporary, and y'all would resubmit something different, then you could actually you could withdraw your variance application to council and just permit this thing under a temporary. Of course, that's up to you, not
Yeah, I'm
necessary.
thinking what the owner wants.
That still needs this body's approval of the temporary.
No. Temporary sign is only for 120 days.
And I don't have to meet the monument standards, is what he's, right, correct?
Well,
I could be out of wood and two posts.
That meets the temporary sign code.
I got you.
But it's only for 120 days. So you
120
would-
days, yeah, I need to talk to the owner about that.
Actually, it's only for 90 days, but Ernest could give a 30-day extension.
Extension to that permit.
He could pull this request until he talk to the owner.
Say again, sir?
He could pull this request until he talk to the owner. He could pull this request until he talk.
So we go forward with the recommendation will be either for approval of a sign that doesn't meet the monument standards? I'm just
Tonight,
throwing that.
they would make a recommendation. I'm assuming Commissioner Wade is going to make a recommendation to council on something, right? And they can take action and give you permanent signage as presented,
Based
a
on,
modification of
basis.
it, or they could deny it as well. And they would be the ultimate call. Or you can withdraw your request, do a temporary sign application, and resubmit in accordance with code.
Let's withdraw the motion for today. Let me get with the customer, which is the owner, and state you have these options. Can we go forward with a temporary permit, meet the 100, whatever it is?
Come in tomorrow and do the temporary
Yeah.
permit application.
But I gotta talk to him and then
But
see
the
if that's what he
purpose,
wants.
the
Yeah.
purpose of that is y'all are in the process of getting approval for a permanent sign.
And that's the key, to tell him, hey, you know, for
Well,
lack of
I'll
a better
have
word,
120
forego the money, let's get you a nice monument, you know?
Right.
Yeah, but, yeah, let me talk to him about that first, so let's withdraw the motion.
Yeah, hold on one second, Rick. Unless we changed this when we did the signs, the code does say that P and Z and/or council needs to approve the temporaries.
It says the date an applicant submits a signage application for permanent signage to the P and Z and City Council.
That's not what, unless that's new language that I don't have.
It says a maximum of 90 calendar days from the day an applicant submits a signage application to city staff for Planning and Zoning Commission and/or City Council review and approval. This provides time for the design, review, approval, construction, and installation of a permanent sign. So,
Okay.
So it gives
So
me
we'll
the
take that
opportunity to
as a
work it out with them first.
All right.
And then if it doesn't work out, or he wants to go back this route and just say, I want this permanent, but to meet that definition that's not clarified, then I guess we'll come back in as a approval or recommendation to the
So
city
the
council.
Applicant is going to withdraw.
I'm gonna withdraw the motion. Or, I mean, not the motion, withdraw the request.
You can withdraw the motion too,
Yeah.
I'm sure you won't mind.
I'm already speaking for, no, I'm just gonna withdraw the request, and then I'll get with staff tomorrow, and then I'll get with the owner first, and then we'll figure out what we need to do.
Very
Is
good.
that good?
Thank you.
Thank y'all, man.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for suggesting that, Rick. Good? Okay. All right. Number 14 tonight is discussion and action on a request by architect Nicholas C. Melde for approval of a conceptual design plan for Haciendas del Rio located within the Old Town of Lotus Special District, 14743 Old Bandera Road, including but not limited to site plan, building design, signage, and exterior lighting. Rick, and you guys have to be, I don't know, otherwise I don't know why you're here.
Do you have any pole signs on the property?
I'll ask the city administrator to speak first.
Thank you. I will say that this is a refreshing change, because this is something I'm getting excited about. It is, after a certain period, quite a number of years since we started developing Old Town, we've been waiting for a development like this to come in. And I think that you can see there's a stark difference between other things that have been proposed in Old Town and what this is proposing in the way of quality of development. That being said, we have reviewed everything related to this proposed development. We do generally believe that the site plan and the building design is indicative of those outlined within the Old Town Helotes plan. And speaking of exterior lighting, it is full cutoff and dark sky compliant. There are some things, and I discussed this with the architect today, that I think we're going to have to work through that aren't technically in compliance with code, and that has to do more with the odd shape of the lot more than anything else. Code does require a residential buffer zone, which is a buffer zone of 30 feet shall be maintained where any Old Town District abuts an existing R1. This Building 2 and Building 5 here that are on the plan are respectively 12 feet, well, almost 13 feet and 16 feet from the property line. We included within the backup material that the site's proximity, however, is close to Los Reyes Creek. And that provides, of course, for the apartment, the proposed apartments, unique views for those residing in those apartments. The creek bed, existing homes, and rear portions of residential lots fronting Antonio Drive are physically and logically separated from the subject site due to the creek banks, vegetation, and the presence of the non-buildable 100-year FEMA floodplain. Included within your packet, and it's all the way at the end of the packet, you'll see that the vast majority of those lots that are fronting Antonio Drive and that back up to the creek are within the 100-year non-buildable floodplain. So the structures that are to the rear of this proposed development would not be anywhere near residential structures that are along Antonio Drive because there is that 100-year floodplain there. So I think that there is reasonable justification for the city to support the granting of a variance to this code provision by the Board of Adjustment. It would have to go to the Board of Adjustment because this is a zoning requirement. Going to building design and all that, staff doesn't have an issue with any of the building design. Of course, the troublemaker is always signage. And there is thankfully creative signage provisions within the Old Town Code that can address some of these areas that are not compliant with our monument code provisions. The surface area of the monument sign is larger than 20 square feet. And of course, that's because we're including all of the mounting hardware and the rock and everything that surrounds it. So a variance would be required for that. The height of the sign, it shouldn't exceed 5 feet. From average grade, it's taller than 5 feet. I think it's closer to 10 or 11 feet in height. The design of the sign, we think is great, but it does require an address, and of course, it's missing a monument base. But I think this is a different type of sign, and I certainly think, from my perspective, it complies with the Old Town Plan, the design criteria of the Old Town Plan. It just doesn't have a monument base on it. Lastly, landscaping of the sign, there wasn't any landscaping on the plan that I saw, and so you would want to make sure that it is set within a landscaped area. The last portion, and I did not see it in the plan sheets that were provided, but the commission should ensure that the height of the streetlights doesn't exceed 16 feet. And I don't know what the proposed, they're all full cutoff and dark sky compliant, but I don't know what the height is. Typically, they're probably going to be taller than 16 feet.
Right, I think they're around 20.
Okay, so that would need to be lowered to comply with code to 16 feet. But everything else, and there's a significant amount of other stuff that we have to look at when going through the Old Town Codes, complies with code, and we would recommend approval of this item.
If you go back to the signs, the size and height, what would they calculate it as they exist, as they were presented?
The height of the sign was, and I'm looking at what I would consider kind of the monument sign, is 9 foot 10 inches. And code requirement is 5. everything with the hanging sign, or the it's the hanging sign that's next to it, is compliant. The only one that is not compliant would be the Haciendas del Rio sign.
And what was the size of that one? Square footage?
If I have to take everything, even dead space in there, it's close to 80, 85 square feet, something along
Okay,
those lines.
just so we're working. Okay, thank you. Okay, come on up, put your name and business address on the record, please.
My name is Nicholas Meldy. I'm the architect representing the property at 14743 Old Bandera Road.
60 feet from.
Okay, so a number of things, I'm sure people up here have questions. I'd like to just start with, if you'd explain to us two things. One is, which of those structures will have residences in them? And how do you get here? Where is this?
Okay. The property is located off of Old Bandera Road. It's about 300, 400 feet off of Old Bandera Road. Let's see, what's the business out front?
Pete's Place.
So the private road, the one, the gravel road or whatever that is now, right? That's the access point, okay.
Correct.
All right, and tell us about residences. and-
Sure.
Go ahead, yeah.
Why don't you use this pointer that I have?
Sure.
Somewhere. This is the green button. Oh. And I can. It's an arrow, too bad. If you want to go to a different page, I can go to a different page.
All right. So we're proposing live-work units, and so it's essentially a mixed-use development where we have ground floor commercial uses for small businesses and the opportunity to rent out, for an occupant to rent out both the ground floor unit and the upper floor residential units. And so on building 1 and 3 and 4, we have ground floor commercial space between 300 and 600 square foot, so relatively small commercial spaces, and then 2 floors of an apartment residence above, so 3-floor total. For building 2, 5, and 6, that are closer to the creek behind, we have, let's see, for building 2, we have a commercial space on the ground floor and then a single floor of residences above. And then for building 5, that is 2 floors again, where we have ground floor residential, and it's a 2-story unit, essentially, kind of like a townhome. And so, and then on building 6 over here, which is actually, the building itself is actually connected at the 2nd level, and we have ground floor parking space, covered parking there, and that too is a 2-story apartment.
So, Rick, doesn't Old Town Lowe's code limit to 2 stories?
No.
I just asked that.
As long as you're 60 feet away from Old Bandera Road, you can go up to 42-foot plate height.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, and I know in the rest of Helotes, we have no apartments, so this would be just in Old Town?
Multifamily is allowed in Old Town.
Impervious cover, there's a maximum
They comply.
40 whatever,
47 and a half.
okay. Others?
Mr. Chair, how many units, sir? How many units, residential units?
There are 17 total residential units.
17?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
So, now I'm confused. So so to be clear, 17 divided through those 6, I think all of them or most of them had residents on the
Correct.
upper floors, right?
Correct.
And you're selling they'll essentially be two-story, 2 floors of residence, right?
So one residence will be 2 stories.
Right, that's what I mean.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Townhouse
Correct.
style. But that's on top of the commercial, whatever's down below.
Correct.
Okay. Others?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
Just a point of my curiosity, so you say it's a 2-story residence generally, and I'm just curious, what's the square footage of living space?
More or less. It varies between the units, but the largest unit will have around, I believe it's 1,800 square feet, and the smallest will be, let's see, the smallest two-story unit will probably be around 1,200 to 1,300, and then the single-story units will be between 700 and 900.
I was just curious, thank you.
Sir, what is the highest bedroom count, the largest unit you have? Would it be a three-bedroom? or
It's a
four?
two-bedroom.
Two-bedroom, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Ron?
Now, are you gonna improve the road to get there?
Yes. That's, I think part of that is, part of the deal is we need to widen it in order for a fire lane to,
And is there more than one entrance to get there?
there is only one entrance to get there. That is, it's off of that, off the road, off of Bandera. Yeah,
Is
from
it
the
that
road.
gravel road that takes you into Pete's? Or that-
Correct. Yeah.
You're gonna,
That-
now you're gonna pave it? Is that
That
the
will be
plan?
improved, right, to be compliant with a fire lane.
Yes.
Uh,
Mike?
Question on the driveway is, so I get, you said you're gonna improve it. Is it gonna be single vehicle wide, or can it accommodate one way each way?
That's a good question. It'll be a minimum of 20 feet wide for a fire lane. And so I'm not sure what the city of Helotes
fit for
standards
cars.
are for, for a roadway like that. But
Okay.
I think most parking driveways are minimum of 20 feet. Yeah.
Is
And
there,
those are the sorts of things that when this goes through the technical review with the fire code,
Sure.
and y'all have already met with the fire,
Correct. We had a
Department.
preliminary review.
is there not though an emergency exit required, emergency egress, a second lane, a second avenue of exit from the property?
no.
Is it gonna be gated?
No, it will not be.
Yours doesn't.
Presumably there'll be an access agreement. I guess that driveway goes across somebody else's property, and so that'll be worked out?
Right, there's an existing easement for access, yeah.
And are these considered multifamily, like R2 use apartments? Are they gonna need?
Correct.
So they'll need to probably have fire sprinkler
Sprinkler system, correct.
and accessibility, fair housing.
Correct.
I presume there'll be an elevator in at least one of the buildings?
No elevator is planned.
Okay. How are they, I mean, it has to be,
So for fair housing, I believe the ground floor needs to be accessible.
okay, so there are ground floor units?
Correct.
Yep, ground floor living units in some of the buildings?
Exactly.
Okay, okay.
What about parking regulations, parking accommodation?
Right, we
accommodation
have,
of parking?
I
spaces?
believe 40 spots are required, and we're providing 42. And that's in a mix of both garages for the residences, as well as surface parking for the businesses.
So for
And then-
example, just, I
yes.
think that's building 3 in the middle, that will, you envision some residential in there.
Correct.
So that would have perhaps a garage.
Correct. You can see the, oops, I just clicked out. Okay, you can sort of see the inlets here at the back of the buildings.
Yeah, okay.
Those are all two-car garages for the residences. Mhm. And then surface parking, of course, will be shared between residences, Building 2, Building 5, and with the businesses that front, the roadway and that front the courtyard here.
What is the courtyard? Is it like a playscape or just a natural greenscape, or what?
So that has really yet to be programmed totally at this point, but we know we want some water elements, some, a nice sound that kind of treats as a little oasis, right away from Old Bandera Road. And so certainly a fountain will be in there, and then the rest of it has really yet to be landscaped. There are a few existing trees here that we'll maintain to provide some shade there and context for us. We've got, so the darker trees you see are new proposed trees, but it's not really showing up on this plan too well, but wherever you see these numbers, Those are existing trees that we plan to maintain.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Regarding the signage, we could talk about that for a moment. I think the issue, the landscaping and I think the address was the other thing you mentioned. You mentioned that? I forget what you said in that, Rick. I think it might have been the address. I mean, those are easily, that's no big deal. Well, where is the sign? Where is the location of the sign?
The monument sign will be right, as the road comes in from Old Bandera Road here, as this access road comes in, it'll be right there, in a landscape bed, landscape area with a backdrop of some canopy trees and understory trees.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yes.
Are you planning any sign out on Old Bandera Road?
Not at this point.
Do folks have thoughts about the signs, size of the signage? I mean, we're looking at twice as tall, about.
Mr. Chair, my only question is, how many commercial spaces do you envision having total?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, around 8. Between 8 and 10 possibly.
8 and 10?
The total square footage is about 3,800 square feet.
Right.
We kind of,
Small commercial spaces.
And there's enough parking for customers and
Correct.
for commercial?
It's, parking is per code, so, right, we meet and exceed code, actually.
Thank you, sir.
what kind of lighting do you have there? Can you discuss the lighting?
Yes, so our electrical engineer, lighting engineer, has proposed some pole lights here, here, and here, which, I think we can, discuss, the height of those certainly. But that's just to, get an even spread of foot candles per code for parking areas and for sidewalks, foot traffic areas. And then we're also going to have some more decorative lighting at some of these columns and along the building edges to illuminate pathways and for more subtle lighting.
Where's the wall sign located?
I'm sorry? Oh, the wall sign that's kind of in the that's a bracket?
Yeah.
So those will be out on these posts. So what's represented in that image is actually, that sign is actually attached to these columns out here.
There's gonna be more than one.
There will be more than one, correct?
Its name on it, I assume.
With a unique business name on it, correct, to each one.
Also on the buildings itself, the separate buildings, will there be signage there as well?
That's not intended.
So building 3 won't be labeled as building 3 or anything?
Only if it's needed for the fire department. I mean, they may require us to include signage, to designate each building. Right.
Ron?
I was curious in the colors,
Yes.
since, our thing is pretty, is it limestone?
Correct. Yeah, the intent is to, be limestone similar to the signs that are found around Old Town Helotes.
The actual siding, what color is that?
That's meant to be a shade of gray, so subtle. I mean, I don't have a specific color right now.
Well, what worries us, we like to approve a real color.
Okay.
And instead of coming back and somebody, oh, you said gray. And, it's
Sure.
something we wouldn't really approve of.
Okay. Yeah, that was not included in the packet, so I think that's yet to be determined.
Yeah, if I can make a comment about that, I think we have given approval and just said that they would have to come back and get final color approval.
Okay.
As a conditional item.
Okay.
Any other thoughts, comments, questions? Rick has, I'm sorry, go ahead, Joe.
There'll be some fencing around this whole complex? Fencing?
The only fencing will be around the trash enclosure.
Okay. Everything else will be open?
Everything else will be open, correct. Or what's existing
Yeah.
in place right now.
Real quick, what color roof are you planning to put?
We're planning on a charcoal, so dark gray roof.
This is I see where your enthusiasm would come from. This is a type of multi-use village that has a lot going for it. Has council or the mayor been involved in this? I mean, it was a little surprising to open this up and see this for the first time. So they're gonna, it'll be their first look at it too. Glad you guys are here.
Well, I mean, they will be.
No, I know.
When it comes before council, they will.
So don't go telling everybody.
Right. Well, my only point was, this is not a new location for a franchise. This is a whole big deal with significant implications for Old Town and for that private driveway and with the creek right there. And your point's well taken about the Antonio Drive residences, but I mean, it's all brand new in an undeveloped area at the moment. So we have, to just review this real quick, the items, should the commission be in favor of this, that do need to be addressed are, well, we talked about final building color approval, to return for that. We also need to address the height of the exterior lighting. The signage, and if people are okay with it as is, we need to just indicate that, noting as well that the landscaping and address need to be included. And then finally, we don't do anything about the buffer. Is that correct, Rick? The setback doesn't,
No, but because this is, sort of goes from P and Z to city council and they make the final judgment call with y'all's input, it would be good to sort of wrap it all into one motion that said, we approve of this, this, and this, and we also support this item going before the Board of Adjustment and their approval of that setback buffer, if that makes sense.
it does, but it's not our approval of that, it's not council's approval of it,
You're-
it goes to the Board of Adjustment.
Yeah,
Okay, that's fine.
for just the buffer issue.
That one piece. So the elements here that we're talking about are color, sign, lighting. I'm forgetting, the buffer, the fourth one is the buffer.
Pretty much everything, yes. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Okay.
What was I'm a little unclear about what was not meeting code with the sign.
Landscaping and to ensure that it's landscaped to code and that has the address.
Height
And square footage.
Well, everything was wrong with that sign as proposed, but I mean, that doesn't mean that it's not a
Right.
good sign.
Right, a creative sign, it could be approved.
As a creative
Right.
sign, and so I would incorporate that the commission is considering this a creative sign in your recommendation.
That's fine. But we still would want, I think we'd want to stipulate that there's an address on the sign and that there's a, landscaping and whatnot. But creative sign would address the size issues if people are comfortable with the size issues.
Yeah.
You don't have a topography map to go with this, do you?
Topography map? There are some topography lines indicated on the site plan. It's very difficult to see up there. I can show you on this printout if
I was
you'd
just
like.
wondering, will you have a retention pond close to those buildings?
I'm sorry, I can't
Do you have a
understand.
retention pond close to those buildings?
No, no retention.
Stormwater.
You won't have one in there, won't need it?
Maintaining the existing flow of water
Yeah,
on the site.
okay.
a monument sign, correct?
Correct.
And that, Mr. Manager, that would be addressed at permitting. They would review stormwater and that kind of
Yes.
thing at the,
Well, in Old Town, we actually do not require
the drainage study.
detention. That was the whole purpose of minimizing impervious cover.
Right.
In that area, but they will be required to pay a fee in lieu of detention.
Okay. Okay.
And that's frankly a nominal amount in Old Town. It's not at the same rate as it is throughout the rest of the city.
So unless there's further discussion, we could have a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Jason, go ahead. Thank you, sir, for sticking this out.
Thank you, guys.
On discussion of an action on a request by architect Nicholas C. Meldy for approval of a conceptual design plan for Haciendas Del Rio located within the Old Town Helotes Special District at 14743 Old Bandera Road, Helotes, Texas. I would recommend approval with the following stipulations, that the sign be approved under creative sign ordinance, provided that they add the address and provide required landscaping at the base, that the site lights be reduced in height and ensure that they are dark sky compliant per city ordinance, that the color will be resubmitted to this board for final approval, all the building colors, and that we would recommend the approval of the reduced residential buffer zone, given the proximity to floodplain.
By the BOA.
By the BOA.
Is there a second?
Second.
Got it.
I didn't hear who got it.
I'll second.
Michael. Anyway, comments, discussion. Jason, Michael, anyone else?
It's a great, ambitious project. Thank you.
This is gonna be very interesting to see. I think this is a long time coming, see how that concept works out, and hopefully it does well.
I think it's our version of the Pearl. I think we have a great opportunity here to do some special things here in Old Town, so thank you, sir.
Yeah, and I would just echo what the city administrator said. There's a lot of moving parts here, and there's still a lot of details to be worked through, so, but it is ambitious and transformative for this particular area. Hope council will have time to talk about this with you as well. So the motion is to recommend approval of the request by Nicholas C. Melody for the conceptual design plan for Haciendas Del Rio within the Old Town Helotes Special District, 14743 Old Bandera Road, including site plan, building design, signage, and exterior lighting with the following conditions, and I think I'm going out of order here, but the final building color be brought back for approval, that the signs be approved through the creative sign ordinance and ensure that they are landscaping compliant and contain the address. The lighting be reduced in size to, streetlights be reduced in size to 16 foot and be dark sky compliant. And finally, that the commission supports the granting of the variance for the residential buffer zone by the Board of Adjustments. All in favor of the motion, signal aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This motion carries. Rick, is this for March 8th?
No, this will go the second meeting in March.
March 22nd?
Yes.
March 22nd. Okay. We have one more item for tonight, I believe, and that is discussion and action on amendments to the Code of Ordinances, Chapter 98, Section 69, Overlay District, B3 Overlay District, and the addition of regulations to the same chapter regulating ornamental tower, et cetera, similar structural element heights that are not designed for occupancy.
I'm coming up here because I'm tired of looking through those two screens and everything.
Go ahead.
Okay. There are two parts to this item, right? There's the section that we're talking about, what uses are permitted within the B3 overlay district and what uses are not permitted and what uses require city council, or excuse me, commission review and council approval, okay? So there's really three different aspects of this. The way that, just to clarify that everybody understands how B3 overlay works, is when somebody comes in and wants to put a business on a lot that's within the B3 overlay district, they're allowed by right, meaning that it's allowed within the B3 zoning district, and the B3 overlay doesn't say it's not allowed, and doesn't say it requires commission council approval, okay? Or somebody wants to put a business in B3 overlay, and it's allowed in B3, but the B3 overlay identifies it as not being allowed, okay? So then it's just not allowed in that district. Or conversely, it can be a business that is potentially allowed, but it has to go through review by the commission and approval by council before it can go in, okay? What we have on the dais tonight are little dots, okay? And those dots are color-coded, and they show these symbols. They're either allowed by, it has a check mark, it has an X, or it has a commission review and council approval, a CC on it. What I'd like y'all to do, if it's okay with the commissioner, the chair tonight, is to identify what uses within the B3 overlay that you personally think should be allowed either by right, not allowed at all, or require council and commission review and approval, okay? Which is why you have the polka dot things on the dais. This is a list of 31 zoning classifications that are either not permitted within B3 overlay, or that are permitted with city council review and approval, okay? We have not placed on here whether they are allowed by, whether they are permitted through CC approval, or whether they are not allowed. And I've done that purposely because I want you to come up here without consulting the code and ordinances as it currently reads. Because the whole point of this is our current code with regard to B3 overlay outdated and needs to be updated? Does that make sense to everybody? So you're not gonna go up there with preconceived notions unless you already know what is and is not allowed, okay?
Those 31 are drawn from the current.
From the current.
Current
Yes.
disallowed or city
Disallowed
council.
or city council, yes. And so if y'all would, whether, I don't know how y'all wanna work this.
Before we do that, did you want to address the other part of this, or is that going to come back?
I'm gonna address the other part of it while she's tabulating what we have on this board amongst the commission.
Okay.
The whole idea here is to try to get a consensus or start a consensus of the commission before y'all debate the actual proposed ordinance at a subsequent meeting, which would be the next meeting in April. Does that make sense to everybody? So basically, I'm gonna count the dots. Whichever has the most dots means that use will go into that category at that time. And then y'all can debate whether it needs to be moved or not at subsequent meetings.
A form of brainstorming.
Say again?
A form of brainstorming.
Yes.
Can we do that? We violating anything if we do that on a recess so people can sort of do it at the?
No, you can do it
So
on-
let's take a 10-minute recess at 9:53.